I'm Wayne Lozanak. And I'm Chris Beatty. We're from Hatebreed. I'm Matt from the Planet Smashers.
We're the Scientists.
I'm Rob. I'm Josh. We're with Psycho Stick.
This is Aaron from Red Fang, and you are
listening to
Bucketlist.
Hi, I'm Mario from The Real Mackenzies.
I'm Phil from Bugangi. We're from Caravan.
Bastion, I'm from Slaves on Dope.
I'm Kevin Keegan. And the band Net Quiet.
We are Keith Grinder,
and you are listening to
Bucketlist.
Hello, we are Ashley Silva from Portugal.
I'm Jordan Alexander.
Scott from Colonel Sun.
We're Overcoats.
It's Charles here. It's a Red Skies.
This is Spencer from Periphery, and you're listening to Bucketlist.
My name's Seth Anderson.
Terrible people.
Hey, I'm Robbie Stuntman from Bose.
This is Curtis from Fuel Damage.
Hey, this is Donnie from Brutal Music.
This is Hispan from Monolord.
listening to
You're listening to the Bucketlist Radio Podcast, putting the best music in your ears before you kick it.
Hey guys, this is the pilot episode of Bucketlist Radio. Woo!
Yeah, woo!
I'm Liz. I am the founder of BucketlistMusicReviews.com, and I'm here with my co-hosts / hosts, who you will be hearing on every show.
I'm a co-host / host.
I don't know.
What's up, friends? It's Jesse Gaynor, and I am an occasional writer for Bucketlist, and I also play drums in a band called Toxic, and now play drums in a band called Manipulated Outcome.
What's up? I'm Sid. I am a writer for Bucketlist, and you may recognize me from a band called Safe and Sound, and things to come in the future.
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm one of the editors of Bucketlist, tidying up the words and such, and sometimes writing them as well. And yeah, I play in a band called Fight Face, and in another band, which is sort of nameless at this time, but we're going with Chris Burns and his Going Concerns. So, thanks.
That's awesome.
So I'm a going concern.
Cool.
And yeah, we're here doing our very first ever Bucketlist podcast, which we're doing as a follow-up to Bucketlist Radio on CJLO, which we
were on CJLO 1690 AM, the Concordia University station. We were on that for about a year and a half, and we decided to move towards the podcast route because we basically just wanted more freedom. Our schedules are pretty tight, so it was difficult having to make it into the station every week.
Yeah,
so
for those who don't know, the Concordia station is in the middle of nowhere.
It is.
And
well, for a lot of us. Not for
So,
six.
so like,
okay. Well,
I live in NDG, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the station is, so...
And for the listeners not from Montreal, NDG is
the middle of nowhere.
To me, where we are now, which is Verdun, which is like the scariest place in all of Montreal,
God,
is
you're
the
so
middle
white.
of nowhere.
Jesus.
oh no.
Calm down.
I think my skin is blacker than yours.
That's very
my
possible,
God.
actually.
So
Yeah, okay.
Enough for
Whatever.
the
Man, you're so swarthy.
thug life.
So anyway, freedom. We're very excited about having the freedom to talk about what we want, and we can use swear words on the internet without any censorship.
Fuck yeah!
Fuck yeah!
Yay!
Yes.
We can do
Put
it.
up.
And overall, it just gives us a longer format. So we're going to be able to play some interviews. What interview are we doing
We
today?
have an interview with Chris Mills, the drummer of Harm's Way, that we did about a week and some ago before Christmas. Paul Ablaze, one of our Bucketlist writers, had done the interview on the phone, and we are going to be playing that for your lovely ears in this episode. I'm super excited. It's really funny. There's a lot to say. You're gonna dig it, all of you.
I'm just going to do push-ups while I listen to the interview.
And
Try
here
to get
come the
swole.
jokes. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, in case, I mean, we could play something from Harm's Way maybe later, just to get. We do have some of their music.
I'm going to just hate mosh around your apartment, though. I might break stuff. Like,
I'm
that's,
not. We are in my apartment right now recording this, so don't destroy anything. Harm's Way does tend to bring out the aggression in me as well. I do want to punch things when I listen to them. So
in a good way, though, right?
In a good way.
In a good way.
Yeah.
You just want to go to the gym and get swole.
Yes.
Yeah, nothing like a nice cathartic punching to start your week off right.
Yes.
You guys are so violent.
But this episode, this pilot that we are, we don't know how it's going to go. We're kind of testing the waters here, but the main topic of conversation is our top 10s of 2017. The team compiled their own throughout. We released it in December, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit and see.
And we may discuss some of our least favorite releases as well, right?
Exactly.
If we have time. I mean,
if
2017
yeah.
was was another great year for music.
It was. But you know what? I'm seeing the opposite from people on Facebook. You know,
I am, and all of those people are wrong. They're
agree
all wrong.
with you.
That's like saying
I do.
But it's like, oh, it was a bad year for music. Dude, you didn't look hard enough. There were too many good records that came out this year.
There was. I had a hard time choosing, I'll be honest with you. I had a really tough time. I mean, I generally have a tough time choosing, but this particular year, it looks like the new Foo Fighters Concrete and Gold was one of the more popular choices. A lot of the teammates picked that one for their top 10s.
Jesse did not.
Jesse was one of the few that didn't. Yeah.
Bored the piss out of me. I like it. Basically, it wasn't the color and the shape. So I love Dave Grohl. Don't get me wrong. Dave Grohl is an amazing musician. That band is amazing. But I feel like the last 5 records they've put out or those 4 records they've put out are easy consumerist rock and roll. That's great for white people to dance to. It's fantastic. But see,
I feel that way about the color and the shape too, and I really like that record. It was when I was 13 or 14, I went out and paid money for that record, which in the age of LimeWire and Kazaa and whatever was rare for me. But to this day, I can listen to it and I love it. But I've always considered the Foo Fighters to be very marketable, very digestible, very very easy to listen to. I find that this record is their most adventurous. The one that sounds the least like anything else that they've released. Like it really feels like they put a lot, especially Dave and his vocal delivery on this one. I feel like there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of really, really sincere anger and frustration that comes out in it.
So that's it. Okay, you made me think of something, right? Because it's interesting the relativity of music, right? The subjectivity of what we talk about, especially when we talk about top 10s. Nothing is more subjective than a top 10. But that opinion that, okay, was 2017 a great year for music or a bad year for music, a lot of that depends on what kind of music you're into, right?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Like,
as someone who's into heavy music, I feel like it was an incredible year. But if you were into like rock and roll, if you were, I don't know enough about those other genres to be able to make that judgment.
But I do. I listen to a lot. Not that I'm saying I know more than you. I don't. But I listen to a lot of different types of music.
You probably do.
And I feel like it was a really like my list this year was probably the most diverse list that I've released since doing Bucketlist and releasing these top 10s.
But the thing is, you see this all the time, right? Every year, there's always going to be people who are going to get behind their keyboards and they're going to start to flame about how terrible the music scene is and how much artists are just putting out whatever and they just want a paycheck. Yeah. And it's people aren't really trying to go out and find, and it's silly because there are so many places to find great music. We
got to cop that Little Xan record, for example.
The difference, though, with that is, or with this day and age, is that it's really, really hard to stand out because it's so saturated now. There's so much at our fingertips that it's hard to find something that stands out. So yes, everybody is a lot more opinionated, and they get offended by everything, and this isn't good enough because there's just so much like access to everything now. It's crazy. Social media. It's good, but it's also scary at the same time.
Double-edged sword.
Terrifying.
It is. It's a very double-edged sword.
Well, that actually is something that I find makes it really difficult for me to choose my top 10 because, of a
your
specific
top 10
year.
was also diverse. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty diverse, but it was because I had a deadline and I had to just dig through a list of what have I actually listened to this year that came from this year, and then I kind of panicked. And then afterwards, once I submitted it, realized, there's 10 other things I can put on that list.
So I've been this new year, right? So my favorite top list source is Decibel Music Magazine. So Decibel is a heavy metal music magazine, comes out of States. For me, it represents kind of the high watermark in music journalism. The writing's really good. I love the people that contribute to that magazine. Mm-hmm. And that top 40 that they do every year, to me, is typically like I will always find. I could debate the like order, but I will always find new stuff. So what I've done is every day I go and I pick a record that I missed. Right? One that was off that. And I have been kicking myself. Like, my top 10 would have looked completely different just because there's so much good stuff, great bands, putting out stuff that... And even I might be like, oh yeah, that's cool, I'm going to check it out. And then I forget. Integrity put out a record this year. Integrity being one of the most important metallic hardcore bands of all time. I was like, oh yeah, I'll get to that. And it would have been on my top 10. is amazing. So to your point, like there's so much saturation. We are so spoiled, right?
Yeah.
Like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, like if you were into heavy music, you were tape trading. Like you had to actively go hard to find
I used
shit,
to make
right?
mixtapes for my friends. Like check this out, and they would always wait for me to make them a little mixtape of music they might not have heard before. I was that person.
That's what I actually asked my boyfriend for Christmas.
Oh really? That's
a mixtape.
I got all nostalgic about nobody making me mixes anymore.
I'll make you a mixtape.
Yes, so
I will.
Was
actually,
it good? Did he drop you a good mixtape?
Well, I asked basically the day of Christmas, so he didn't have time yet. But it's coming. It's coming
Next Christmas.
So-
Next
But
Christmas.
what's amazing about our list in particular was like Jesse was saying with Decibel, is that we are getting some pretty cool comments from readers that are saying, oh, there's some stuff in here that I haven't heard before. I'm going to check it out. So it's kind of the same idea with Bucketlistmusicreviews.com is if you want to discover new music, look at our top 10 list of there's tons here. There's tons of music.
Especially because none of us are the same, right? So no two lists are
we all
going to
have
look the
very
same.
different tastes.
Like my list and Stacy's list are completely different.
Exactly.
Like,
Well, because I'm kind of like a statistic sort of minded person, I actually, while we've been talking about Foo Fighters, was curious how many Bucketheads did put the Foo Fighters album on their top 10, and the answer is 8.
Yeah.
Out of 26 people that submitted a list.
That's not too shabby.
Well, considering
So-
how fragmented everything is, that's
Yeah.
pretty
That's
amazing.
not
It's
too
one
bad.
of the only ones
Yeah.
that made it onto 8 lists.
Yeah.
So, but still, it's less than half. So I think, like, relatively speaking, like, it's a high-scoring album,
It
but at the
is,
same time,
yeah.
like, it doesn't really encompass, like, our musical taste in
No,
general.
not in general, that's for sure. But it is still out of the bunch.
but it is a
Japan
testament.
Droids is another one that hit
Yeah.
quite a few lists as well.
I think it's a testament a little bit to how accessible the music is, and I mean it made my list too. So when I say it's
Yeah.
accessible, that's not an insult. But because
Depends who you
it's if you're asking me, it is not an insult. It's interesting that so many people with so many different tastes put that same record on their
That's
list.
my
Which
point.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And to a certain extent, like there are other ones. Like I think that's the way everyone should approach looking and reading top 10 lists, right?
Right.
Because we talk about the internet and the good of the internet and the bad of the internet. The bad of the internet are people like bitching about this should have been number 1 or and all this sort of stuff. That's pointless, right? That's an argument for YouTube comments. If you approach reading top 10s of, hey, this is a discovery engine, like, if these are people whose opinions I like that I should just check out, that's the best part of it, right? Like, there are tons of albums, like there are people who I know through Bucket List that I will go check out a record because I know their opinion on music, right? And that's the fun part. And it's stuff that I normally wouldn't listen to. Although I don't know, Sid, if I could ever really get into Lil Peep.
I need to explain this one because I grew up hating emo music.
Yeah.
Right? When I was in high school, emo was the devil. I grew up, I was a metalhead. I started listening to Metallica, and then I got into black metal and death metal, yada yada yada. So anything that was emo and Hot Topic and whatever was terrible to me. And I didn't start actually looking at the history of emo music like Fugazi, Rites of Spring, bands like that.
Yeah.
Late 80s, early 90s. I didn't actually start checking it out until I was 19, 20 years old and a little bit more open-minded to all kinds of music. And
it's good for you. I wasn't open-minded about all kinds of music until my mid-30s.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
No, I joke.
Okay.
I joke. But
I understand why it is a very whiny record. But I like that it's something different that I think hip-hop hasn't really delved
Is
into.
Lil Peep we
He's the
covered
guy who
that
died.
show.
Yeah, I
he's the
covered
one
that show.
He's the one
Yeah.
that killed himself
Yeah.
shortly after.
He overdosed. It wasn't a
overdosed.
suicide.
Yeah. We shared a
and
video of that. Yeah.
I had no idea who this guy was going into the show. Right? I had heard the name from a friend of mine, Young Easy, who I've made music with, and he was really into this guy, and he played a track from him, and I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. Like, I'll go check it out. And I'm looking around, and it's rare to see a show that is so, like, the crowd was so young, right?
Yeah.
And you just see what the kids are listening to, and you realize that disconnect between what you're listening to and what the kids are listening to, and so to see that phenomenon of okay, the adults are actually ignoring this. They don't know that this is happening.
Yeah, this is the pulse of culture, and I think that the SoundCloud hip hop and like emo hip hop is a thing that like most people don't think of. Like Lil Peep was definitely like kind of popped up this year just because he died, but like think of like the latest like Lil Uzi Vert record, right? Like XO Tour Life is an emo record, right?
And the thing is, Lil Peep is late to this party. Like he is not the progenitor of this style, but he's a great representation of what it is. And I lost my train of thought there a little bit. But the record is cool if you want to hear something that is on the pulse of like I guess the high school youth.
Yeah,
because that is
that's what's interesting. Like that represents an entire style of music that for like a big part of like our generation we don't understand that, right? And it's funny because that happens, like that's the turn, like that's culture, right? And as much as we may look at those sort of things and be like, that's whiny bullshit, right? How many people a generation like advanced from us look at the music that we look at reverentially and go like, that's stupid bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And like that's getting old and getting like that's culture, right?
Well, it's funny because just last night I was sitting around with some friends and we were talking about, you know, who's gonna have children and like all the philosophies of parenting and stuff related to music. And I always thought my dad had a really amazing policy, which was he would never tell me what I could or couldn't listen to. The only thing he would ever comment on was volume. And I thought that was super awesome. So I would be listening to Cannibal Corpse or Guttermouth or some horrible, terrible, offensive shit. And I would start it really, really loud because I was like, fuck you, parents. And then he'd say like, hi, I think we agreed on 10 on the stereo being the maximum for a weeknight. So if you wouldn't mind just taking that down to 10. And meanwhile, it's like, fuck you, mom, fuck you, dad lyrics.
Oh, man.
And I thought that was really awesome. But I was saying, like, I think that's super cool, but I'm really going to have a hard time if I have a kid and they start listening to the Lil genre of stuff. And,
the Lil genre.
Yeah, like Lil so-and-so, or God forbid if it's like a Miley Cyrus.
Lil Xan is the weirdest one now.
Oh, wow.
I was gonna, and that's what my friend brought up was Lil Xan, and I listened to a track, and I was
Xanarchy.
actually,
it's huge now.
I was blown away. I actually really kind of liked it.
What the hell is that?
So Lil Xan is so SoundCloud rappers are a big thing, right? Like so it's like these little guys who are recording beats and developing. That's the other thing that's interesting about music fragmentation is that you have these artists that may be able to record in a basement who develop these massive followings that no one else knows about, right? Like they're able to tour. Solo tour going on right now in the United States. He's like
Lil
18,
Xan?
Lil Xan, Xanax, right?
Yeah, he's short for Xanax.
Yeah. So he's got a drug problem.
His style is kind of
and he
like
has a drug
chilled
problem on
out.
top
But the thing is, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that is a big part of this scene right now, right? Is these downers, these opioids. It was big in Lil Peep's music. It's huge in the goth boy clique
because they're dealing with anxiety, they're dealing with depression, and like
this now, you know.
But it's kind of like we're seeing a revival of the kind of like downer '90s, very very grungy, very sad music. But it's kind of translated into hip hop, which to me is fascinating.
Well, because the rock record is nobody's making rock music anymore, right? Like it's really not a lot of people are making rock music anymore, right? So it's fascinating, but. So this guy's blown up. I do want to make one point though about Lil Xan, just because it's an interesting factoid. He has a guy within his crew whose rap moniker is Xan Frank.
Okay,
and he has a giant face tattoo.
Oh my god.
Of a hyper-realistic portrait of Anne Frank on his face.
Oh no, he doesn't.
Yeah, he legit does.
Oh my god.
I don't actually know how I feel about that.
I did not feel good. I did not feel good. But yeah, there's a documentary, little plug, there's a bunch of documentary about Lil Xan, and I would suggest watching it because it gives you a really interesting look into that whole little scene and that little world, and his background is fascinating.
Okay.
But yeah, so anyway, this all started because I called you out for Lil Peep on your list.
Lil Peep is one of my favorite things to talk about this year. Honestly, I could talk about that record for hours. Okay, so I'm talking about my top 10 list, right? Transition. I wonder if I have to give Anthony Fantano money.
I'm just looking at. I'm trying to open up your top 10 as well because I'm curious. I don't remember. Oh yeah, you had a really interesting one.
Okay. I mean, the thing is, when I do these lists, right, you have to keep in mind these aren't necessarily the records I thought were objectively the best of the best of the best.
Why not?
Well, because the first thing I do when I'm doing a top, because it's a personal top 10 list, right? So the first thing I do is I look back on the year and I think, did any of my favorite bands release records, and did I really like them? So that's how the Incubus record got on there. I know that for a lot of people, the Incubus record was not an amazing record.
I listened to it the other day for the first time and I'm like, what the hell is this? It's so different from Science and like...
Well, they haven't released a record like Science since Science.
So
that's, I mean, to me, it's the like, it sounded the most like what that classic, I guess, mainstream era Incubus sounds like. So like Morning View,
which is a great album. Or Morning View is still fantastic. That's
Morning View is a great album. I think this record is on par with Morning View.
Interesting.
Because there is still a lot of experimentation on it. It's not as boring as their last couple records, which I really didn't like.
Yeah, I agree.
They like, it was almost elevator music on If Not Now When.
It was actually.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
This one is a lot more exciting. Like I love Love in a Time of Surveillance. Loneliest. I'm the loneliest I've ever been tonight. I don't remember exactly what the title of that song is. So I mean, Incubus definitely made it on there. Converge for sure. I don't think Converge are ever going to release a record I'm not going to like, unless they completely switch gears, and
which they haven't done in like 1996. When they for 95 is when He's Stuck in Halo came out. 95, 94. Yeah. So
they made the list too. Converge was another one that was on quite a few lists.
Great record. It's a great record.
I think Converge are one of those bands where it's like, if you like heavy music and someone shows you Converge, it's hard to find something to nitpick about them.
Unless you're Travis Dick. So I have one friend who's really annoying about that band because he's like, they're just the emo band, and it's like, oh yeah, so they write really heavy music about emotions, right?
He's probably trolling.
I know, he's also trolling, but he's ridiculous. Anyway, but I agree with you. I feel like that's one of those bands,
and that record is on both of our lists, right?
Yes, because you and I share opinions about a lot of things.
Some things. So yeah, Converge, Incubus. Queens of the Stone Age, again, I know a lot of people didn't like that record. I thought it was a great record, but the thing about the Queens of the Stone Age record is I also really like Mark Ronson.
Okay.
Not just for Uptown Funk, which is the one thing that a lot of people know him for, but he did a song with Mystical.
Yeah.
He's worked with what's her name? Amy, not alive anymore. That's the one. Thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, he's a really interesting guy.
I was going to say Schumer to be a jerk, but I decided to help you out.
I was thinking the same thing.
He's a really interesting guy. I think he's done a lot of really interesting things for pop music, and I think it's cool that he kind of made the transition into rock music with a really weird rock band.
Yeah, the new Queens made it also on quite a few lists, and I will never understand that.
Not on any other Bucketheads lists, I don't think. Did it?
Yeah, it made it on Aaron's, it made it on Jordan's.
There you go.
Yeah, they did well. I love Queens of the Stone Age. That album I find incredibly boring. Everyone kept telling me to listen to it more than once because it's one of those albums that grows on you. I listened to it, I think, maybe 6 times, and I was still falling asleep. I was so disappointed by that.
It's not Songs for the Deaf, right?
No,
it's not. It's not a heavy record particularly, which is what a lot of people want when they listen to Queens of the Stone Age. I think they want not necessarily heavy, but dense. Yeah. And this is very, very light. I think
there's a lot of people that are like. It's kind of like our discussion offline we were having about Mastodon, where like a lot of people pine for the older days. Like people kind of want Caius, right? People want Caius or Caius Lives Again, and this band is not going in that direction. They're never going to do that again.
They never were really. They had a little bit of that in their first couple releases, but as Josh Homme has gone on and
he's worked with a bunch of different people, like a desert rock band.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, that's a good way.
And the thing about someone described this record as a riff buffet. And I think that's a great description of it because it's full of these tasty little jams, which is one of the reasons I really like Queens of the Stone Age, is because they have this feel on the record that still kind of sounds like they're playing it live, even though it's meticulous and tight and really well produced.
Josh Homme may be a total shitbag.
He is a huge shitbag.
But he can write. He plays he plays a mean guitar.
At least he had. Well, no, he doesn't. Well, he does sort of. He did.
He apologizes for being a shitbag, and then he's a shitbag again. It's like everything on.
He didn't apologize right away either. He came out and said, in a moment of being lost in the music,
I have been lost in the music. I have never ever had the urge to get up from the drum kit and be like, hey, fuck off.
And you have to watch that video, right? Because he deliberately goes out of his way to bring his foot out to make sure that he connects.
But you know what? Right? In his defense, not entirely, because I still don't think I don't condone any form of violence whatsoever, no matter what. He really is not all there. He's on a lot of drugs. He does a ton.
I think we lost the mic.
No, it's in the flower. It's in the flower. He's you can tell in the way he was moving and his face, and I have friends who've interviewed him. The guy is not all there. He does a lot of drugs. Not that I'm making excuses for the guy.
I think there's
he's
a
a little
difference.
bit of an
He
eccentric.
needs to go to fucking rehab. That's it.
That's an explanation, not an excuse.
It's
We can
not an
explain
excuse.
that behavior, but it doesn't make that behavior at all
That's
acceptable.
That's the same thing we were talking about Action Bronson earlier,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Who's just a terrible human being. But I want to eat
Action
Bronson. It's just a bad person.
He makes a killer,
But
like chicken parm.
That's
right?
it. Watching him
enthusiastic
cook, I
cook.
want his cookbook, and I want to try his recipes
my
because
God.
there's so much passion in it. But I recognize objectively that he's a bad
jerk.
person.
I don't know much
punished.
about. I don't know much about Action Bronson.
He's
honestly.
a misogynistic.
I know his music, but yeah.
And everyone on my company's television station loves this motherfucker.
Really?
And because he now has like 2 shows and a cookbook.
Right.
And I just can't he bores the piss out of me. Like I'm like, yes, I get it. You're high as fuck and you're eating food. And I get that you understand food, but that's why I prefer. We were talking about before, and people out there will know Maddie Matheson because Maddie's like basically an ex-cocaine addict who acts like he's on cocaine all the time because he's just like, hi, everything's amazing, and I want to be friends with everybody. And it's more positive. Action Bronson is just like, I'm super high and I'm the coolest guy in the room. And fuck everybody else. And I can't deal. It's like you're like the popular kid in high school.
So fuck the popular kid in your high school, dear listener.
You also
I
also
wish.
put Velvet Black on your list, and they're a Montreal band. So I
Well,
thought
okay,
that
so
was
that's
kinda
the
cool.
other thing.
Yeah.
Once I kind of go through my favorite bands and I sort through the ones that I actually like their records versus the ones I didn't like their records, then it's what records made the biggest impression. Like, which ones surprised me? Which ones stuck with me? So the Velvet Black record definitely stuck with me. I really liked the vocals on that record are killer.
I think we have that in our list of music. Did you send me that one? Or?
I think I got that one off of Bandcamp.
Okay.
We can check that out.
Yeah.
I may have it. If it's in there, then
we can play that later on. Maybe get our listeners listening to some of Montreal local music because I know that they're doing pretty well and yeah.
So that's it. So the next thing for me is like what's interesting, what's making an impact on its scene.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the Thundercat record made it on there, because Thundercat is a case where you have this jazz musician who seems to be the most popular in almost like a rave context. And I reviewed the show, right? It was I Love Neon put on that show, and there was a DJ that opened for him, and a lot of these young hipsters, for lack of a better word, are dancing, and you can tell a lot of these kids are on substances that aren't necessarily legal, and the pupils are dilated, and they're all having a good time. And Thundercat comes on, and they're still having a good time, but there's almost this disconnect from the music, right? Because it's like a jazz trio playing this just really intricate music, really chill, really laid back, really, really, really intricate music in a context that would normally have a soundtrack backed by like a DJ, by like an EDM DJ. So that's why that record made it on there for me, because it's just so interesting to me, his fan base versus the music he actually makes.
Context.
I actually don't know Jadena.
Jadena made it on there because not only is the record really interesting, it goes through all different styles of hip hop and tribal music and all kinds of different things. But it's also really poppy. But
Trivium,
that
though? Really said Trivium?
Hold on, I'm still talking about.
Yeah, I gotta say, I haven't heard that record, but I'm pretty sure it's bad.
Hang on. I'll get to Trivium. Give me a second. I'm still talking about Jadena, guys.
Okay.
Because I knew you were gonna jump. I knew especially you, Jess, you were gonna jump all over me for Trivium. But I don't know if you guys saw Luke Cage.
Yeah.
So Jadena
briefly
was the best part of that show for me. There was 3 musical performances that happened.
I only
in the
watched
club.
the first.
Oh, Jadena was one of
Jadena was one of them.
Oh, okay.
And he put on a great performance of "Long Live the Chief." And
oh shit,
that record,
man.
And
okay,
that
that's
beat
super
just
good.
like, wow, I love that beat. I need more of this song. And for a couple of weeks, I couldn't listen to anything else because it just kept getting stuck in my head, and I needed to play it.
I'm gonna listen to that. I remember that.
Interesting. Okay.
It's a really interesting beat. It's a really interesting record. It is very poppy, but it goes through all kinds of different styles, and it's very personal. It's really cool. And when an artist is a one-off musical performance in a show that's supposed to be incredible, and that's the only thing I remember, then that to me is interesting. Now, Trivium made the list because
Defend yourself, Sarah.
I used to love Trivium when I was in my high school phase, and I was getting into heavier styles of music, and
Yeah, that was
I
roughly around
discovered-
your time. You're
Yeah.
that era.
And I discovered Ascendancy, and I really didn't like metalcore for the most part. I was tired of breakdowns as soon as I heard breakdowns.
I could have sworn you were a huge metalcore fan. I thought that's how you and Greenberg bonded.
No, me and Jason bonded over Avenged Sevenfold,
Okay.
who have never really been a metalcore band as far as I'm concerned.
I think there's a lot of mixed definition between metalcore and new age of American heavy metal.
Right.
We've had that discussion before.
we
That's
had
a that's a
that
whole other
discussion
podcast
before.
in itself. Sarah.
Yeah,
It
let's
is. Let's park that.
Let's skip that for now.
Let's
'cause
park
that's gonna be
So
a
Jason
huge
and I
one.
bonded over Avenged Sevenfold, Green Day, and Slipknot.
Okay.
So not whatever your opinions are of those bands.
I didn't say anything.
In case you're wondering,
You motherfucker.
listeners, Jason Greenberg is also a writer for Bucketlist.
Yeah.
And
we-
occasional host.
An occasional host, that's true. And we like to mock him for his love of metalcore. So if you are a metalcore listener, or if you listen to metalcore rather, and you're listening to this, we're not.
Oh no, you wait. There's going to be a full episode where Sid and I have this discussion. I'm just going to prep that you're going to have to tune in later for this. But Sid and I have a discussion about definition of terms and then what is and what is not metalcore.
Jesus.
And I think it will make an interesting discussion.
It will be
when
a
we have
fascinating
enough time to
discussion.
go through it, which is why this podcast is so good. But we're not going to do it now.
Yeah.
We're just going to keep going. So
So
trivia
yeah,
record.
so the
Almost
trivia.
trivia.
Why?
So-
Why?
Why?
So
say
when
it?
I heard Ascendancy, I loved Ascendancy. I love everything about that record. You guys know I'm a huge Metallica fan.
Yeah.
And a lot of what Trivium was doing, and they actually got a lot of flack for this when they first started releasing records, was that it was very similar to what Metallica did in the 80s. It was very riff oriented. It was fast. It was the songs kind of went through these progressive structures, but still kind of being verse chorus, ridiculous solo, whatever outro. And there was a lot of great hooks while having that intensity and that aggressiveness of what I, at the time, thought that metal was supposed to be. And then as Trivium kept releasing records, I just kind of stopped caring, because to me they lost what made that record such a great record. And this one, I had to give it a listen, and it goes back, as far as I'm concerned, to what they were doing. It sounds more natural, it's just so much more alive. There's a lot more melody, and it's a lot more honest melody. It doesn't sound so forced. It's not these kind of like plotting 8-minute, just boring pieces of pseudo thrash. It's like really exciting, intense riffs, and they are fantastic guitarists. Whether you hate them or not, Mr. Gaynor.
They are good musicians.
They are
and like
great musicians.
I actually, as much as I dislike this band, your definition and your I accept where you're going with this, because I think that's fair.
I appreciate that.
And that's a great reason to bring a band back like that.
Yeah.
It is personal, but if you feel that they've gone back to their roots on a record in a way that's true.
And I've tried with every Trivium record that's come out since Ascendancy, and I just could not find anything to really justify its own existence. But this record to me was just so natural and so honest, and such a return to form that I had to include it on the list, just for some kudos.
Well, I think that makes a lot, like what Jesse said. I think that's like really legit what you said, but we just have to remember, bring it back full circle. It's an explanation, not an excuse.
Yeah!
That
Savage! Oh man, that's
You know
spicy.
what?
Man, it's spicy.
Trivium doesn't need you guys.
Oh.
All right. They're
Really, they've
beyond
got
that.
you. They've got you. Oh boy.
And then what else did I put on there? I've got Beck is just good.
Beck is always good.
Yeah.
I've seen the last time I saw Beck in concert was like at the Sepsum,
Right.
in 2001. And the only thing I really remember from that show, besides being awesome overall, was he opened by coming down from the ceiling on a couch.
That's amazing.
And he was just like lying there, like on his side, and just it was such a good show.
One thing that
I
always
miss Beck.
strikes me about Beck is like, if you try to, like, because we often divorce the artist and the art from the actual human being behind it.
Right.
And to me, Beck doesn't have an actual human being behind the artist. Like, I can't imagine him as a regular guy going out buying a sandwich and like, what's a day in the life of Beck like? I imagine it involves pinwheels and guys on stilts and like some kind of like mustache, like trying on like session at a boutique or like
he's
something
very
totally weird.
He's very like in terms of image, very similar to Prince. I think in that sense.
I completely agree. That's such a good comparison.
Like I picture Beck having a microphone in every room in his probably huge house, and being record ready anytime he needs to like wake up
That's a good
with a
way.
guitar
I'm
lying next to
inspired.
him.
I'm inspired.
Exactly.
Yes. Exactly.
Whether he's in the shower or not, the guy can just record music. And you know what? Beck was someone also who I'd never really listened to before this year. Like Loser. Everybody knows Loser. Hi, Snapchat. Lucy's Snapchatting. Or live.
Are you blowing up
whatever.
the gram, or is this
I'm blowing up the gram.
Oh
Blow
boy,
up the gram.
oh boy,
And the Facebook. This is going to go on
Oh.
Facebook too.
oh my god.
Hi,
my God.
we're recording our podcast right now. We can edit this out.
Okay.
So yeah, but this is the first time I really sat down and listened to a Beck record all the way through, and I've been kicking myself
Is
because
Because his last album before this one won
Didn't he?
like
A
tons
bunch of
of
Grammys.
Yeah,
Sea
it's.
Change is dope.
Well, the other thing is I've never really respected the Grammys all that much, so I kind of look at that list.
Oh,
and-
yeah.
I don't respect it. I'm with you on that. I know.
F the
Not that it
effing
matters.
Grammys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't even think there is a metal category this year at the Grammys, which
Really?
I get.
Oh,
yeah,
it's
but
fine,
metal
whatever.
has been fading.
I get
from
it.
the
I get
Grammys
it. I
for
understand
many
it.
years. Yeah.
But for the most prestigious award show in the world to just ignore an entire scene of music is that's just so silly to me.
Yeah, it's
But,
the Grammys. They suck.
Anyway, long story short, Beck's a great record. You should check out Colors. Who's next?
It has to be me because I gotta do this. I gotta speed around
Right.
this and get the fuck out of here and
Yeah.
go cook dinner. But this was, you know me. I got
Always on the run.
Always on the run.
Always on the run.
I got a family to take care of.
Okay.
But this was a great year. There was so much good stuff. Like I think there are some.
We had a couple of similar choices. Too.
Yeah.
Albert.
I think there are some usual suspects on my list, right? I mean,
Do you like Full of Hell?
Maybe I like Full of Hell. But you know what? I do want to talk about that record. Because, like,
Here we go. Full of Hell Rinse.
yeah, but like to me, this was an interesting record for them because it was kind of a return to form. So the last couple records, the last record they did that was a full length for them, was also a collaboration that they did with Merzbow, like the Japanese noise artist. And like a lot of the stuff was kind of building, like they were getting really experimental. Then they did this like weird like collab record with The Body, and so they were really getting into like the noise and like industrial music, and that had always been an aspect of their sound, but they were kind of exploring that more and more. And like Trumpeting Ecstasy was a return to like, let's just do grindcore, and it's as if a grind band just ate Obituary records. Like it was like, let's just put as many like mean fucking gnarly death metal riffs from the 80s as we can possibly jam into a record. And it is what I've liked about them as a heavy band is that most aggressive music is based on this brooding machismo or like toughness or aggression. And their music has always been an existential crisis. It's that there's a hopeless nihilism to it that is bleak, but at sometimes really beautiful. And I think they like the opening of that record is a quote. It's Werner Herzog from one of his movies talking about like nature being violent and that the trees are in agony. And it's just it's stark. So, but I love this band and I love this, but they also put out in 2017 another collaboration record with The Body, but it didn't make my top 10. I just can't get into those their collaborations are great, but they're not for everybody because The Body is weird as fuck.
I just want to say that I don't plan to say as much as Sid and Jesse are or to discuss as much as Sid and Jesse are with my top 10. I'm a little bit more simple, so I feel kind of
it's okay
bad now because I don't have as much
I'm
to say
sure
as you
you'll
guys.
have some great
have some
stuff
stuff
to
to
say.
Yeah.
So Paul Bearer, I think, was a great record.
Yeah.
If you're into Doom, like that was an amazing record.
Beautiful album.
All three of their full-length records, everyone should own.
That one made it onto a lot of lists as well. Yeah.
Mine, Jesse's, Tom's.
And if we're counting, Converge was 7 people.
Ooh, that was up there.
Made it
People like that
Foo
record.
Fighters? Or Foo Fighters was 8?
Foo Fighters was 8.
8 people.
Oh, so close.
So close.
Converge was on 7.
Damn.
And so different, like Converge was just...
Imagine, see, this is bucketlistmusicreviews.com. We are so diverse in our taste, yet so similar.
So yeah, that, I mean, no, it's okay. Yeah, Converge is always going to make a list for me just because I've been a fan forever. But there's interesting parallels of musicians that are double dippers on my list. So Converge is a group of musicians that all have different projects, right? One of those, their drummer Ben Kohler, is in a band with Stephen Brodsky of Cave In, and that band is called Mutoid Man.
Yes.
And so
That's true.
Yeah.
I totally forgot
Oh
about
yeah,
that.
all the side projects. So and Warmones to me is
Love
the
Mutoid
best
Man.
Mutoid Man record. It was really fantastic. Super
I came
catchy.
close to putting that one on my list too.
Oh,
Actually, yeah, it's really good.
Super fan. Kiss of Death. That song on that record is like I think I listened to it. I had that. To me, a great record is one that you can just listen to over and over and over and over and over again. And that one had a song on it. Like I remember walking to work one day and I just put Kiss of Death on repeat, and I was like, "This is a fucking
That's
jam."
an amazing one.
Speaking of that, like a late addition to the list, and another one where there's kind of like a music crossover. So early in the year, like in Feb or March, I discovered this great Arizona death metal band called Gatecreeper, and they put out Sonoran Deprivation, and it is one of the most brutal records I have ever heard, but there's just something also wonderfully hooky about it. Like you can't listen to that and not like if you listen to Sonoran Deprivation and you don't bang your head, like I don't understand. Like, it's awesome. It's a
full of groove and like
there's groove
so good.
and just pure like unmitigated brutality, but in a way that's accessible.
Did we review that one?
I don't know if I did.
Okay. Pretty sure I received that one.
Nate Garrett, who is the guitar player in that band, is a lifelong fan of traditional Metallica, and kind of a doom dude, right?
Okay.
And he wrote this entire record himself, and then got a band to perform it and go to the studio. So it's a band called Spirit Adrift. And if you're a fan of if you're a Metallica fan, like Sid, you have to listen to this record.
Well, I remember we played a song.
We played that little clip.
We played that little clip, and it was really interesting.
But from the start, like the opening of this record, it's all like there are little things in there, like just the like fingerpick guitar stuff that like is so iconic of like Metallica records. This guy, and in interviews he talks about how he's like, I don't give a fuck, Metallica's the best band.
Songs like Battery or whatever, having those little
so to me, that was a late edition, like the
Spirit Adrift was a late edition, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Spirit Adrift was a late edition because I only heard that record like about a month before our shit was due. And
we played it on our last show.
On the radio station. I was like, okay, I have to listen to this in full, and I fell in love with it. Power Trip. I mean, there's not that many bands that are doing interesting thrash nowadays. Like it's a very carbon copy, and to me, that is the interesting thrash record of the year because it combines. It's got all this really great. It takes all the best parts of hardcore, really interesting guitar parts, and just a tinge of death metal to make it a little bit guttural, and like they're just super fun.
We will play a track of theirs.
We will
once Jesse's done discussing his.
Who was the band? There was a band that I just recently saw open up for Children of Bodom. And you're right, it's very, very difficult to keep thrash... Well, not difficult to keep thrash alive, but there are just so many bands that are just doing the same things that every other thrash band did in the 80s.
Yeah.
And Uncured, I think.
I don't know that band.
No. It was Lost Society. Lost Society. These guys
they were really good.
are so good.
Yeah.
They're so good. They're so tight, and there's just so much energy behind their music, and it's classic thrash. Like there's really nothing new to the formula, except it's just done. They're not ripping anyone else off. It really is their own sound. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. I get it.
Really
that's
cool
a great
band.
way to describe it. I will check that shit out. Other thing I want to highlight there is a band called Feeding Illness to Society. That's a local Montreal group, and I believe we did review that record. And to me, that similar to Sid was talking about, like when you go through all the bands that you like, did they release great records? I put all of theirs, and then there's like the records where you're like, what popped out to you as being different? And like talking about thrash is one of those genres where there are certain genres where it's like pizza, right? Even if it's shitty, if you're like you're gonna like it, right? It's like cold pizza the next day. It's kind of good, right? So for me, like if you're a thrash band, I'll probably dig it if it's not that bad. D-Beat, put out a fucking D-Beat record, and like I don't care if you sound just like Discharge, cool, I'll like it, right?
Yeah.
But punk rock is one of those genres where it's just so easy to do the same goddamn. I play in a lot of bands that sound pretty much the same, right? So it's really, really awesome when you hear punk bands doing what I think is like interesting punk. And like a band that I just discovered this year, unfortunately didn't put out a record, was a band called Gasm. They're a hardcore band, and they're like the weirdest hardcore band I've ever seen. And like they don't do any of the like there's no hoodies or like b-ball shorts. Like they dress like weirdos, but they're like hard as fuck. And like it was really cool. But this band, Feeding Illness Society, I think is on that. They're like I would call them freak punk. Like they're doing this like cool style of like pogo punk that's hardcore. So it's pulling from the old style, but it's weird. You know what I mean? It's not this easily accessible. It's not cookie cutter, right? Because
it's so easy to just slap a bunch of power chords on top of some blast beats and just this is punk rock, right?
Yeah.
But I will check this out.
No, it's cool. Interesting. It's really neat. The last one I do want to talk about before I get out of here is the Arson Project. So
Yeah, what is that?
So the Arson Project is really fascinating. I am a giant fan of a Swedish grindcore band called Birdflesh, and I first saw them live with my father in 2014 at Maryland Death Fest, and it was one of the coolest concerts I'd ever been to.
It's coming to Montreal.
Yeah, there's a Quebec Death Fest coming this year. Oh my god! So yes, and like produced by the Maryland Death Fest guy.
In like 2 seconds.
Probably, but that's cool.
So we saw that band. I've been a big fan of that band for a while, and Birdflesh came to Montreal for the first edition of Ear Slaughter, and I was so excited. They played; it was amazing. And then their guitar player Ellis Markog was like at the merch table, and actually no, that's it. We were in line at another band's merch table at Die Choking's merch table, and we were both buying tons of shit from the Die Choking merch table. And I was like, "Hey, you're Ellis Markog from fucking Birdflesh," and like he was like, "Yeah," or "Yeah," right? And I was like, "Do you have like?" There was a particular split that I wanted because they did a split with a band called Pretty Little Flowers, or Pulverizing Lethal Force. Yeah, they're known as both bands. Okay. And I was like, "Do you have the PLF split?" He's like, "Yeah, I do." So he's like, "Come down." So I went and talked to him, and then we started talking about music. And
Are they from Sweden?
Yeah.
I think you should do more of that accent all the time.
Everything
apologies
is better.
Ellis Markog, if you're listening to this, because we're friends on Facebook, I'm like, sorry, dude, because you're like the coolest guy, and I was a little bit starstruck to speak to you, but he was such a nice motherfucker. And then he was like, hey, I told him actually about Bucketlist, and I was like, hey, I'm reviewing the show for Bucketlist. He's like, that's awesome. He's like, I just want to let if I
shared the review, I think, a bunch of
times.
He did. The band
and then he also said, like, I'm starting this new project, and like, I'd love you to check it out. And it's called the Arson Project.
Ooh.
And it's basically like if you take a bunch of really talented dudes from Sweden and they want to write a Nails record. Like it is brutal, but it's super intense. If you're into like it's not for everybody. It is heavy as fuck. What I think is really interesting is it's sort of a separation because Birdflesh are incredibly talented, but there's almost a comedic punk angle to it. Like people go to those shows and dress up and like you bring inflatable sex toys and you throw like everybody wears Hawaiian shirts and they wear weird costumes. Like the Arson Project is like there's nothing, no joking. It's all brutality.
Because that's Nails is very stark and very like.
Yeah, you just want what's his name? Why can't I think of his name? I interviewed the guy, lead singer of Nails, Todd Jones.
Yeah,
you just want Todd Jones to be like fucking slur, right? That guy's so dour.
But it's so interesting. Like that music is if you can get past the grating on the ears, like it's there's so much. It's like an onion, right? You peel it back and there's so many layers to what they do.
Well, especially like that's why like certain grindcore bands that are doing really complicated shit, I'm always like
it's pretty impressive.
It's impressive at like the stuff that's not that accessible. Like you look at a grind band from like Australia called Portal. Like you listen to that and it's at first listen it is inaccessible, right? Or even Gorguts to a certain extent is inaccessible because it's just so dense. But if you give it time and kind of listen, especially if you're a musician, like that's what I kind of like. But it's to me finding those records that hit that kind of great crux point between being discoverable, but also like enjoyable.
Like if being a grindcore fan is almost like being a horror movie fan, right? Like people like to be scared as much as they like to hear scary music.
Yeah.
If you're not someone who can sit and watch a lot of like really obscure horror movies from different parts of the world and be grossed out by weird things and be scared by weird things and you're open to that, you might be open, they're not inclusive, but like if you can do that with music, if you can sit down and really let yourself be weirded out, be uncomfortable, then you can discover some really strange, very emotional music in a style that's almost it gets typecast as just really aggressive.
But at the same time, I'm like totally cool with people not liking it. I used to like we talked about music maturity before, right? And like how especially I think when we're all teenagers, most of us, at least me, I know for certain, like it's like this is good and that sucks, right? And as much as as much as I joke about those sort of things, my true feeling about that is like, look, if you like it, you like it. It doesn't affect my life if you like something that I don't like. And also, you also have to appreciate that there are some genres of music that you might listen to and be like, that's just a thing, right? Like it's like, oh, rapping is just it's simple. Everybody can do it. It's just a beat. And, like,
I
they're not
used to
actually
think that way,
singing.
and now I appreciate it so much more. So I was that rebellious
Anyone
teenager.
who says that, I'm like, okay, make a rap. And then they're like,
They're like, oh, it's like,
freaking
see,
hard.
you don't have bars. You don't have bars for days. And so doing it for the culture. But all that to say is that I think, like, part of the way that people discuss music is that, like, you just tend to be. People tend to be closed-minded, and especially when it comes to heavy music, right? Like, everybody's a fan of heavy music. It's it's all it is screaming. It's like, okay, well,
Yeah, but
great.
you know what?
My answer to that now, like, I used to get all defensive and be like, no, it's this. I'm like, when people are like, yeah, it's just that yelling music. I say, yeah. Right? Because, like, great. If you don't want to get into it,
And
then, like, for real.
The thing that I always tell people, because that's an argument that you hear a lot, right? Oh, it's just screaming, whatever. I always tell people, because people are used to melody in music and hooks in music and whatever in music coming from vocals, because that's what mainstream radio is.
Yeah.
If you look at the aggressive vocal style as more of a percussive style than it is a melodic style, then you start to hear the melody in the guitars or in the keyboards or in whatever other weird instruments that these bands are, just because it's 2018 and metal is anything.
I think that's actually a great point, because there's some vocals, right? One of the big issues people have sometimes with heavy music is they're like, I can't understand what he's saying.
Right.
It's not really the point. Like, they're just using that as a I'm gonna tie this back into going to a song soon.
We're gonna go to a song. I know we've been talking for quite a bit, so we will take that little break and go.
Because I have to leave.
Yes. So what song shall we play? So we were gonna play some Power Trip.
Yeah, I think so. I was either gonna play Feeding Illicit Society, but I think I do want to play Power Trip. If we're gonna do something.
Their latest or their only single.
I think it's
I can't pronounce it.
I got it. It's all good.
Do it.
So it's off of their new record, which was on my top 10, called Nightmare Logic. This is the song Executioner's Tax, in brackets, Swing of the Axe. And this is just this riff, like, it's like the slowest riff on the album, but it is the most gnarly riff. So I hope you enjoy it.
So we're gonna take a little break, play some Power Trip, and then we'll be right back. And Jesse will not be with us, sadly, because he has to go and be with his family.
That's right. I'm gonna be responsible. Cook some food.
Be responsible. Go be responsible.
All right,
fuckers.
this is Power Trip.
Got adults.
Okay.
So we just talked a little bit about Jesse's top 10 and all the awesome loud and heavy stuff that you can find on there. If ever you want to check on any of these top 10s that we're talking about on the podcast, you can always go on bucketlistmusicreviews.com, and there's actually a nice banner right at the top. If you click on it, it'll link to all of the Bucketheads submissions of their top 10 of 2017. So that was
Executioner's Tax. What is it? Tax Swing.
The Executioner's Tax Swing of the Axe.
Yeah.
That's from Power Trip.
Jesus. Yeah, that's what we just listened to. Yeah, and
you may hear a very loud cat purring in the
yeah,
background.
that's my cat in the background. I don't know if it's picking up, but his purr can go pretty far. So that's Oliver. He says hi.
Kind of like a bird chirping, like really consistently.
Yeah.
So what about you, Liz? You've got a pretty diverse top 10.
I do. It's my first list that's included some rap and some ska. And I mean, my usual, Swedish stoner rock that I pretty much listen to mostly, like Mastodon, Emperor of Sand. I love that album.
Did you just call Mastodon Swedish rock?
Aren't they Swedish? Aren't they from?
I don't think so.
I think they're from here.
No, Mastodon are from the States.
But they're from the States. But I think the singer is Swedish. I know one of them are Swedish. I'm pretty sure. If I'm wrong, okay. But I know that the one of them is.
The owner and founder of Bucketlist Music Reviews, ladies and gentlemen.
But we've got some Frenzel Rom on there, and I was really excited that they released this album, High Vis High Tea. They haven't released an album in, I think, 10 or 15 years.
I've never even heard of Frenzel Rom.
They're a band that I got really, really into back in the 90s. They're Australian, kind of, they have like a pop punky kind of sound, like Bad Religion.
Okay.
But I don't know, they just kind of stole my heart back in the 90s. I was obsessed with them back then, and I don't think they released anything since. So I was really excited when this album came out, and where was I? So they're Australian pop punk, and I've been talking with them a little bit on Instagram because they've been sort of commenting on my comments and my photos and my tags, and they're really, really appreciative of my obsession with them.
Right. As most bands would be.
Yeah,
they did make sure.
Yeah, they did play Rockfest last year, and you can just knock him over. It's okay. Yeah, he's just gonna walk away.
I picture like tuba music. You have to see this cat. He's like
he's
just
everywhere,
kind of waddling from side to side. Just
dum dee dum dum dum. That's what he would sound like if he had a voice. Dum dee dum dum dum. Yeah, so they played Rockfest last year, and it sucks because I'm not exactly like a Rockfest goer, attender. But I did try to convince them to come back and maybe play Pooza Fest or something along those lines. And they really, really love Montreal, and they would love to come back. So we'll see. Maybe they'll be back. And then the other choices I have here, there's Foo Fighters, Concrete and Gold. Obviously, we were talking about that at the beginning of the podcast.
Right.
But there's also a band that I just discovered this year called Spider God, and they're from Sweden. Sweden/Norway, mixed up.
You're sure of this now?
I'm 100% sure.
Okay.
And they are phenomenal. I think they have now, they have, I think, 5 albums now, and they're all fantastic. They're stoner psychedelic rock, but with mixes of jazz, because they use a lot of sax in their music, so it's really interesting. Gorgeous voices. And I've been trying to spread the word on this band to everybody, but nobody really listens to me. So
it sounds like something that I would be
you
really
would
into.
You and Jesse. I've been telling Jesse forever. Even you, Sid, would like them. Everybody would like this band. They're just so good. They have that 60s, 70s sound. Like you would think that they were literally. And I know a lot of stoner rock is influenced by that, but they do literally sound like they would be from back then. And there's Horizont, who's also from Sweden. Again, they were probably on my top 5 best shows of 2017.
Okay.
And they played Turbo House. They played Turbo House, a very, very tiny venue in Montreal that fits, I think, 80 people. And
comfortably fits about 3. But yeah, fits 80 people.
It's small. It's a small, very DIY venue, but I love it. It's moving though.
If you've never been to Turbo House before, you just always pack a pair of earplugs with you.
Loud. They get really loud.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they have a big jar of earplugs on the counter.
Sometimes
Do they? Sometimes they don't,
Yeah.
I think.
And
Sometimes they
I
don't.
know this for a fact. A little interesting side story, because I once got very excited seeing that jar across the room, and I thought it was a big jar of cheese puffs.
I did too.
And I was really stoked. I'm like, oh my god, you guys have a big jar of cheese puffs. This is incredible. And it turned out it was just inedible earplugs.
Yes.
But
It's nice because they do like to crank up the sound, and
their
you
sound
have to be
system is
careful.
phenomenal.
It
it's one
is.
of, it was
It's
one of
too
the
loud,
best
though.
sounding rooms in the city as far as I'm concerned.
it's far.
It's just too loud.
Every time I go in there, and I always love the bands that I'm going to
Yeah.
see there, right? Like I'm always really excited for the show, and then I leave and my ears are bleeding, and I'm like, did I hear anything?
I know that's why like I always go with earplugs too, because there were times where I thought I was going to throw up. It was so intense that I've been going to shows since I was a baby, so I never wear earplugs. It's bad. I gotta start, but this is one. I know it's really dumb of me, but this is one venue that I have no choice but to wear earplugs because it does get pretty loud. But when I saw her Horizont there was maybe like not even a quarter full because the band apparently booked the venue very, very last minute, so they didn't have enough time to promote it. But it was probably, again, one of the best shows I've seen in 2017. So much energy. They're a huge band, and I mean physically and just their sound. No, they're all very tall. They're Swedish. 7 or 8 members in the band. So on a small turbo house stage, it can get pretty packed.
Cool.
But yeah, the stage is tiny there. So let's see what else made my list. So there's the Kubricks, who are from the UK, and they're like a ska band, and I completely fell in love with this album, The Heist. And myself and Matthew Perrier from Toronto also put this album on his list. They were super grateful. I think they have a little over 5,000 likes on Facebook, so they're just starting out, but extremely talented. We're going to play something from them, I think, a bit later, if that works. With their latest single, Hold Us Down.
And Matthew's like a big ska guy too. There's not a lot of ska on his list.
He really mixed it up. He did mix this one up for sure.
But it's like, you know that this band, both of you put it on there, and like he chose this ska record. You know what I mean? So like, you should check this one out. I should check this one out.
Fucking amazing, yeah. And then of course Japan Droids, who also made it on quite a few of our lists. It was, I think, me, Sean, Lee, and I'm trying to remember the others who picked Near to the Wild Heart of Life. Japan Droids are another band who were on hiatus for quite a while. Well, not that long. I think since 2012 they sort of took a break and went on a big tour this year with the release of this album. And I love it. I mean, apparently it was Lee who reviewed their show last here in Montreal. I've seen them 3 times and they've always put on a fantastic show. But they didn't get a lot of praise this time around, so I don't know if something happened in the last couple of years, if they just calmed down a little bit, but they were another band that, I don't know. And then of course Kendrick Lamar, that's my one rap album on my list.
I still haven't heard this record yet.
It's really freaking, it's so good. I know he's, huge now, and it's weird because I have a very interesting list this year. I was torn, but this album is definitely worth listening to, and I think Eric put Damn on his list as well.
As did Sean.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's definitely something very, very worth listening to.
Well, I mean, Kendrick, like, it's not that he was responsible for the revival of lyrical rap, but he's definitely responsible for pushing forward the idea that you need to have substance and as well as flow, and his flow is amazing.
His flow is perfect, yeah.
I've liked very much almost everything I've heard by Kendrick.
Yeah,
he's
he's
super
one
impressive.
of those, everyone, even if you're not a huge fan of rap, it'll just grow on you, I think.
Just jumping back to Japan Droids, because I like counting,
Yeah.
5 of our top 10s included Japan Droids Near to the Wild Heart of Life.
So
it's
Foo
another
Fighters-
pretty high scoring album for 2017 from the Bucketheads.
Okay, so what's the order? So Foo Fighters was 8, and then
Pulver,
Converge.
Converge was 7.
Yep, 7. So we clocked in 8 for Foo Fighters, 7 for Converge. Pallbearer was on 5.
Okay.
Japan Droids on 5.
Okay.
So
this is
we've
our
got some similar
taste.
taste happening.
Yeah, we do have very similar taste. And there's another. My last. Well, I think I'm skipping a couple here. No, I'm not. There's the Flatliners, Inviting Light, and this was a tricky one because a lot of long-term Flatliners fans really didn't like this album. I don't know if you guys listened to it yet.
I haven't listened to it yet.
They did get a little softer.
Okay.
They got a little more mainstream, I guess is the word.
Is it
to
like, did
use.
they get a little slower?
They got a little slower. They got softer. They're not as punk rocky on this one.
Because they were never like a heavy band.
They weren't. But I just adore this album. Like and I've had some debates with fans, and they just like Jason Greenberg, for example. He's a huge Flatliners fan, and he's like, don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful record. It's just not them. So we'll listen to a track. That was a good Jason impression. Yeah. We'll give. I think what we'll do next before we go into Kate's top 10 is we'll play 2 tracks. Since the Flatliners and Kubricks were on a couple of our lists. We're gonna play the Kubricks track, their latest single, Hold Us Down, and then we'll play Hang My Head by Flatliners, I think, because that's the video for that song is so awesome. And then we'll get back with Kate's top 10 and discuss what she felt of this year's music releases, what they did for her. Yeah. All right.
Oh geez, I'll try to prepare myself. So okay, let's listen to some.
Here's your ska fix for the day.
And punk.
Awesome.
Okay.
So we'll have some Kubricks and some Flatliners.
Yep. All right.
Alongside the Kubricks, nothing's gonna hold us, nothing's gonna hold us. Bang diddling, 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 diddling. Yaga, 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 yo. They can't hold us down. Yaga, 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 yo. Hear this, Brian.
Hey, you, looking at me. What is it that you think you see? Oh, wait, you used to believe this town. To be free. Now every time that we try to speak so loud, we're shouting into the crowd. Everybody wants us to hold us down, hey, until we're in the ground. Everybody wants us to hold us down, hey, can you hear this sound? Everybody wants us to hold us down, hey, we're gonna take this town. Everybody wants us to hold us down, hey, from the underground.
So all the people living here in this fear, to living in the shadows they engineer. I'm calling to my neighbors to we are here. Hey, hey, they say nothing's gonna hold us. Whether you're black or white or brown, when you come, but you better listen to me sound. Listen to the song of what we really putting on. Hey, hey, nothing's gonna hold us.
Tell me, what do you say? And everything that we're meant to be. Oh, wait, you used to believe this town. Yeah, living in sin. And every time that we try to think, shut down, never to be seen or found.
They're trying to hold me down like a ball and chain. Bobby's on the beat, the teachers teach us to be more the same. Question nothing, if you see dysfunction, you should walk away. Can't stress enough, the pressure's building up, don't let it boil away. So who is it that's doing this for you and who to? Are you a student to their movements or choosing to do you? Because the system got us twisted, got us clicking like and living life through pictures. Statuses become opinions, I'ma think a little different,
Everybody wants us to hold us down, hey, until we're in the ground. Everybody wants us to hold us down, hey, can you hear this sound? Everybody wants us to hold us down, hey, we're gonna take this town. Everybody wants us to hold us down, hey, from the underground. Everybody wants us to hold us down. Everybody wants this legacy of embarrassment. Yeah, I usually sing alone, but tonight I'll bite my tongue clean out, because all my friends are nervous wrecks. Don't have the time to take a breath. Yeah, all my friends are nervous wrecks, preoccupied with looming death certificates of whatever is trending next. Yeah, accused of being out alone, while still you know my phone's been a home. Yeah, the one losing sleep, trying to work your by your line eloquently. See all my friends are nervous wrecks. Don't have the time to take a break. Yeah, all my friends are nervous wrecks, preoccupied with looming death certificates, reading too much into this. Cause all my friends are nervous wrecks. Yeah, all my friends are nervous wrecks. For this legacy of embarrassment. I usually sing alone, but tonight I'll bite my tongue.
All right, so we're back.
We're back. So what we just heard was the Flatliners' Hang My Head off of their latest album, Inviting Light, that was on my top 10, as well as a few others. Sean, I think, and I can't remember the rest.
Danielle,
Matthew.
one of our other
Danielle.
editors. Yeah,
Yes.
quite a few people picked that one.
We did, and then before that, we heard the Kubricks' Hold Us Down off of their latest, The Heist, which was on my top 10, as well as Matthew Perrier's top 10 of 2017.
So for those of you just checking in now, that's a really cool ska band from England.
Yep.
So we were saying if you are into ska, definitely check out some of the recommendations from writer Matthew Perrier, which you can find on our bucketlistmusicreviews.com top 10 from the Bucketheads. So now we're talking about my top 10, and way to put me on the spot, guys.
Interesting
No
choice.
pressure.
Yeah.
So I'm someone in life who has a really hard time picking favorites and making lists. Well, I actually really like making lists, but narrowing it down to 10 was a bit of a challenge because this year a lot of the music that I listened to didn't get released in 2017. So to prepare, because we're all kind of talking about our our process in choosing these songs and how they make the cut, or these albums rather. So what I literally did was look through my list of what I had listened to actively this year, and then was like, is that one from 2017? Oh, it is, hooray! And chances are, if I noticed that it was released in 2017, it got on this list somehow. And later, after reading all the other Bucketheads top 10s from this year, I thought, oh man, I missed out on I totally forgot about a bunch of really good ones.
So maybe after this we can go. I know Jesse left, but maybe after you're done we can go around and put a couple of records that like we would have put on the list
if we had known better or thought about it. Yeah, but ultimately I'm okay with the list that I picked. There's a few on here that I might have left off in favor of other stuff. So I didn't rank it in order of top to bottom, like 1 to 10. But if I did, for sure, my number one album that came out in 2017 that I listened to almost obsessively every day is OC's the album Orc. And what I stupidly didn't realize is that this is the same band that sometimes also goes by the name The OCs. And I thought, well, what do you know? Some other band has an almost similar name, but this band is great because I've been a fan of previous releases by The OCs.
Okay.
And they've been around since the late 90s. And they are a band that is probably best described in the garage psychedelic rock family, but they're so surprising. And
I don't know them.
I absolutely love this record without even realizing that it's a band that I've already listened to several other albums and really liked. But one of the things I really dig about them is the fact that album to album, they just do completely their own thing. Their albums tend to be a little bit thematic, and this one, particularly Orc, is kind of like a storytelling in a way. Not directly, not like an overarching narrative that's consistent, but you've got tracks called like The Warrior, The Tower, almost like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
I was gonna say
theme,
because orc, like an orc is a Lord of the Rings.
Exactly, like a monster from Lord of the Rings.
It is not. It didn't originate in Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
I'm like yelling at the mic right now.
That's okay.
For you fantasy fans that are going to be all up, and I was like, that's not where it came from.
But it is a central monster
as made
type.
popular by.
Yes, as made popular by Lord of the Rings. But in the music itself, what I found really interesting on this album is that there are some sort of overarching musical themes as well, like specific phrasing, and I'm a bassist, so I always hear the bass line like a lot. And the bass on this is incredible, but so is everything else. And you've got a lot of cool like shouts, you've got some female vocals mixed in there to like a really cool effect. And the track, I love an album that you can listen to from track 1 to the end in order without shuffling or mixing it around, and it's got this really nice balance between the track lists. And this album is very much like that. Like the first song's super intense with some incredible guitar solos and wailing, and it just is all over the map in terms of like this super staccatic kind of playing that gets super, it's always tight, but it's really all over the place. And I adore the first track. But then the next one is a bit like of a step backward. It's a bit calmer. Then you get back into the third track, which is really intense. So like the back and forth, and then hearing these little musical phrases that are not identical, but definitely come from the same musical theme that are repeated throughout the songs. It's super, super exciting.
So like, was it a concept album or is it?
To be honest, I haven't done much research about it, hence not even knowing that it was the same band. But at one point I was talking to someone and they're like, oh, you mean the OCs? And I'm like, no. Apparently this is another band that has a similar name. And they're like, no. Check this Wikipedia page out. And every couple of years,
the most reputable source.
Yep. So this band has changed their moniker about 5 times.
Okay.
So it's always a variation on.
So they're kind of like the
OCs,
P Diddy of like stoner rock.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's like VOCs, O.C, like the letters, or just OCs, and then as of 2017, they dropped the and just became OCs. So
that's kind of
each of their periods has a name, which, in a way, as you say, can be kind of freaking annoying because
for PR purposes,
how do you follow it?
Yeah.
But when you listen to them and see the variation between albums, you realize that this band does not give a fuck.
Okay.
And they don't care. And
like they do their own thing.
They're gonna do what they want, how they want to do it, 100% of the time, and you can't help but respect it at the end of the day.
I guess so. I mean,
as a PR person, like, it might be a nightmare, but they really don't give a shit.
Thank God I'm not their publicist.
And very much in the same vein of music, I quite liked the second self-titled album by Ty Segall.
Right.
And Ty
I think
Segall...
that Ty Segall was on a couple of lists as well.
Yeah, he made it... Jordan Hodgins
Yeah.
is one of our writers, and we have very
We have a very similar taste.
taste as well. This is not my favorite Ty Segall album.
She put the OC's record too, but she has it as the OC's.
Yeah, exactly, because she didn't get the memo that in 2017 they dropped the D. But neither did I. But Ty Segall is another kind of garage rock, sort of punk influence, but sort of psychedelic, hard to categorize, but garage rock is a nice umbrella to put all that under. And again, it's wonky, it's loud, it's kind of all over the place. He's got a great singing voice mixed in there. So out of all of Ty Segall's repertoire, I wouldn't say this is the most exciting one, but it made my top 10 because I actually listened to it quite a bit this year. My number 3 spot would go to LA Witch.
Yeah.
So LA Witch put out a self-titled record this year. They're from LA. It's 3 women in the band, so like a female 3-piece.
Yeah, very like True Widow meets... Oh, God.
It's kind of hard. It sounds like things you've heard before, but they do it in a different way.
Right.
So it's kind of like really dreamy, echoey, but still it has this toughness to it that I really like. So that was a super good one for me this year. I also absolutely loved Monolord. Their release this year, Rust, which is a super good stoner rock, and I believe they're from Sweden.
They are from Sweden.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Liz and I have that in common, loving our Swedish stoner rock for sure. Yeah. And another one, sort of in the stoner rock category, but a little bit more metal, would be Bell Witch and Mirror Reaper. And that, if I'm not mistaken, because I've looked at and heard about so much music lately, I'm like probably talking out of my ass here, but I think that is a single track. I think Bell Witch Mirror Reaper is one track. It's like an hour-long
Is that
album.
them?
I'm gonna just...
Was that them?
I was actually talking to Jesse about this at our Christmas party about I don't remember whether it was Bell Witch or not, about a record that was one track, and
that might have been Bell Witch.
I'm just gonna double check that right now before I say anything stupid as we're recording this. Yes, it is one track record. Very similar to Sleep and all kinds of... I mean, it's not the first time that this has been done, but they did it really, really well. And it's an hour and 23 minutes, one track, and it is excellent.
I just have to go...
It's totally excellent.
I understand, like, I get the artistry behind doing something like that. I don't know what the principle is that I've had for such a long time that I cannot sit down and listen to a record like that. I need to be able to like skip to a song or skip to you know what I mean? Like
you have to be in a really specific kind of mood for something like that, and it's good background music too while you're relaxing or you're working.
Well, that's it. Like if you have 83 minutes to sit around and do something focused.
Like I love to sit. Like I love to listen to an album all the way through, right? Like I think that the art of the album is something that a lot of bands will neglect, and that really bothers me too, because when you can put together a proper album that sounds like a solid piece of music from start to finish, like that's something that's absolutely commendable.
Right.
But I know a lot of people like Bell Witch. I know a lot of people like this release.
Yeah.
So I'm a dick right now, but
no. Like Jesse was saying earlier, everybody's entitled to what they
You can't really argue preference.
You can't argue preference.
But something I would say about this album that I think is kind of exceptional, whether you can sit there and it's nice to have albums that you can sit down and digest and just kind of stare at your stereo or sit in your comfy chair and just listen. And if you've got 83 minutes to do that, you can definitely get into this record and just like ride it through. But it's also kind of cool as background music. But something really remarkable about this record is that I don't think they have a whole lot of guitar. I think it's mostly organ and bass carrying the melody.
I'm gonna listen to it.
And you've got this crazy soundscape that has quite a lot of variation, and you could skip through to sort of track morsels in.
So you're saying it's not like a 20-minute verse and then like a 10-minute chorus and then like a 20-minute verse?
It's got a slow build. You've got to have some patience, but it's very like one of the tags that gets used for Bell Witch is funeral doom.
Right.
So it's got kind of like a bit darker on the doom side, a little less stoner rock, a little more doom. And I actually really love doom, surprisingly.
I mean, the two
I'm
go very
sort of
well
all over the
together,
place,
I think.
but yeah, exactly. Like it's really well done, and I'm just checking to make sure because I'm really curious if I'm wrong. No, absolutely. There are no guitars. There is Dylan Desmond playing bass and vocals. We've got Jesse Schreibman percussion, Hammond organ, and vocals, and that's it. So not only is this a guitar-free doom album, which when you hear it, you'll be mesmerized that there's not a single guitar lick in there because he uses his bass so evocatively that
I'm sure there's a lot of gain on it.
yeah, well, the thing is, like, a bass is essentially a lower scaled guitar with less strings, but with pedals and effects, you can really, like, as a bassist, I'm just, like, you know, fangirling the shit out of this.
I mean, like,
so
you look at,
it's
like,
super, super good, but the organ as well, and it's a Hammond, and if you're, like, a gear nerd, a Hammond organ just has this particular sound, and it's just fucking excellent. This is an excellent record. So it's really easy to put this on my top 10. Just double checking, like, yep, it did come out in 2017. Okay, I'm good. Also on there, I had a really, speaking of duos, there's quite a few duos on here. The Pack AD. They are a duo from West Coast US, forget exactly where. I think Washington, if I'm not mistaken. And what a fucking powerhouse these ladies are. It's drum and guitar. And they both sing a bit, and I've seen shows of theirs here in Montreal, and every time I'm actually coincidentally wearing a Pack AD t-shirt right now.
We cannot confirm because she's wearing a lumberjack shirt over it.
There
it is.
This t-shirt is a picture of a hammerhead shark and a howling wolf against a mountain, and it is a dope t-shirt.
Nice. That's pretty fucking dope.
That's pretty much what they summarize to me, is a hammerhead shark meeting a howling wolf, and the hammerhead, I think, is the drummer. But it's, like, these ladies are amazing. It's pure-blooded, like, jean jacket, rev your car engine, rock and roll, and I love these ladies. They're super, super good. On there, I also put a super good thrash album, which I'm not sure if anyone talked about in this session yet. I don't think so.
Iron Reagan?
Iron Reagan crossover. So I'm someone who dabbles in thrash. It's not my favorite genre of all time, but I do really like the heavy from time to time, and this album surprised me. It surprised me that I liked it as much as I did.
I love Iron Reagan.
And it's just like an acoustic punch to the face or a sonic punch to the face. It's super, super good. Can we play an Iron Reagan song?
We should be able to.
Yeah, I think maybe after we'll play an Iron Reagan. Two of the ones.
Bleed the Fifth we'll play.
Okay, cool.
That is such a thrash name. I love that.
Bleed the Fifth is one of the best songs on this album, actually. Also making my list was LCD Sound System.
Yeah.
So we go from like a crazy thrash record and some super jean jacket, lady rock, and some doom, some funeral doom, way over to the poppier side of the spectrum. And it's funny because it's another comeback album this year, because LCD Sound System didn't put out anything for I think a decade, at least a decade. It might be closer to like 15 years since their last release. It's been since like the mid-aughts, like the early aughts that they haven't released anything.
Okay.
And I really loved LCD Sound System's early stuff. I got super, super into it. There's a ton of classics in their catalog, but I would say their last 2-3 albums were just kind of meh. Like, they didn't grab me. I was kind of thinking, okay, they're past their prime, whatever. Totally changed my mind when this record, American Dream, came out. And I wasn't expecting to love it, and it made its way into my regular rotation in 2017. And I particularly like the song Call the Police, which captures his kind of like UK sort of alt rock, but with a little bit of punk influence thrown in there. Like, it's a really energetic and like kind of anthem-y sort of song that is just super great. And the ones that I might have left off if I had paid closer attention are Met's Strange Peace and Black Angel's Death Song. Black Angels are great, but this album, frankly, I would have put Pallbearer on here instead of the Black Angels if I had been more organized. because frankly, this is a good album. I made it on my list because I had listened to it fairly frequently, just in rotation in 2017, and it was released that year. But this particular album did not actually, it wasn't any kind of departure, it wasn't any kind of like deviation. It's just more of the same Black Angels. And if you like Black Angels, it's very like,
I'm not too familiar with them, I don't think.
They're kind of like slow and building and like guitar based, like sort of echoey vocals and stuff. Like, it's a good listen, but it's nothing super exceptional, and definitely going through other people's lists, I'm like, man, Pallbearer is way better than this album. So if I could switch it out, I would. And Met's Strange Peace, it's a good album. It came out in 2017. I like it fine. That's pretty much all I want to say about it. So maybe we would play some
Iron Reagan.
Iron Reagan now. Yeah. What do you think, guys?
Yeah,
let's do it.
All right, we're gonna play Bleed the Fifth. Check it out.
Guaranteed not to talk. Witness the burner spree. Can when you convict me? Your testimony's going down into the grave. I'm insurance and just in case. No one's gonna put me back into a cage. I think it's for the best. Bleed the fifth. You can't hide from me now. The pigs salute the wise, surrender fertilizer. Your testimony's going down into the grave. I made sure of that just in case. No one's gonna put me back into a cage, especially you.
We could just talk forever.
Yeah, we could just talk forever. We are recording now. So.
Yay! Let's talk forever into the microphone.
So what did we just listen to?
We just heard Bleed the Fifth by Iron Reagan off their crossover album, which is super awesome.
On Kate's Top 10 of 2017.
Yep. That was some heavy stuff.
It was some heavy stuff. And speaking of some heavy stuff, we are going to now play an interview that we did, that Paul Ablaze, Buckethead, did a week and a half or so ago with Chris Mills, drummer of, I hope I said his name right, drummer of Harm's Way, to discuss their newest record. And we're gonna
Which
play
guy
that.
do you think is big? Because Paul's a big guy.
Oh, definitely the singer. I'm so sorry. His name is
Paul interviewed the drummer.
The drummer, yeah. No,
And
the
he's not
singer
as
is
big.
the singer takes the cake. He's like the biggest one. He's huge with a heart of gold. He's such a sweetheart. He looks scary, but he's really soft spoken and really nice. Had a chance to speak with him the last time I saw Harm's Way in Montreal, and really, really, really very well mannered person. He said he was shocked because the crowd, our old photographer Angie Radjenko and myself got completely ambushed in the crowd, hardcore crowd, and he mentioned that he's never seen a crowd that violent before, and for him to say that, it's pretty scary. So ever since then though, we've gotten a lot more strict on security, so hopefully we won't experience that again, because violence is one thing. I mean, feel the music, do your thing, but don't beat up other people, because that's not cool.
Yeah, don't
I think-
take the band's name literally, guys.
Yeah.
Like, Harm's Way doesn't have to put you in harm's way.
Yeah.
But
It's happened.
Had to get a dodge
I've
up.
witnessed it more often at hardcore shows than any other type of show where like the band has to stop playing to tell some idiot in the crowd to stop, like doing things that are going to physically harm other people.
Yes.
Beyond the like cathartic whatever, you want to wave your arms around, you want to do what you're going to do, but just make sure that you're not going to like make people bleed to the point they have to go to the hospital, Josh, homie.
Well, you know what's crazy is that I find like people out there who do not listen to heavy music and don't listen to metal, they don't go to metal shows, even punk shows, or anywhere where a mosh pit is likely to break out. They have this conception of heavy music as being ultra violent, and the people, like the fans, are scary, and oh my god, they're wearing leather and black, oh my god. But actually, generally speaking, the metal community, and to a certain extent the punk community, is so welcoming and embracing, and everybody looks out for each other, and you're there to like be part of the experience, not to act out these violent tendencies.
Generally,
that
but not so much lately, I find.
Well, I think it's because we're getting, like, these scenes are getting infiltrated by people who don't really know what they're about, who think that it's like a forum for them to like just bash people and get their aggro tendencies out, but that's really actually counter to my whole understanding of like the metal community and the punk community. Like,
I have
you got
this-
these interlopers like ruining shit.
I have this conversation with Tom almost every time. Tom is one of our photographers. Almost every time we do a show together, and he always goes, he loves shooting metal shows because a lot of the metal community is used to going to shows, right? Like in general, they'll buy more festival tickets, they'll go see more concerts, they're always on the floor, they're used to being in the crowd. Whereas people who are kind of casual showgoers or more into other styles of music don't necessarily do it as often. So the crowd becomes, first off, it's harder to work your way through the crowd, because at a metal show people will stand aside and they'll let you go through, and you know, if you want to be in the front, be in the front, if you want to be in the back. But other shows, it's almost like people need to be in the front, they need to be pushing, they need to be sardined together, so it's really the opposite of how people perceive it.
I've only ever gotten told off at like non-metal and punk shows for accidentally being in the way of someone.
Yeah.
And I'm very like aware of my space, and I'm usually the one that bitches at other people for not being aware of my space. Like if they're standing in front of me or if they push me, I get really mad. So I'm a very polite showgoer, and the last two shows I can remember where I got shit was at Yellow Wolf, one of the best shows of another top 5 show for sure for me for 2017, but the crowd fucking sucked. I was sort of close to the front, and I was like, a few rows behind, and this guy started yelling at me from behind, saying that I'm too tall, I'm in the way, and blah blah blah, and I just said, you know what, fuck this, and I left, because I just didn't like the vibe. Same thing at Glass Tiger, it was all older people, so they're obviously, like Kate was saying, definitely not used to going to shows anymore.
Right.
And I got the same thing, like just very rude, uncomfortable, like everybody wanted to be in the front and didn't understand, didn't have like that mannerism. So I just think it's also a Montreal thing, because I've noticed going to shows in other cities of the world, like we're probably one of the most rudest crowds compared. I'm not kidding. Like when I was in Chicago, I saw the Cult there. It was jam-packed, and everybody was like, if you even got remotely shoved a little bit, the person would be like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. Whereas here, people will shove you and not apologize. So I find like it just depends on the city too. Montrealers we're a pretty stressful bunch. So we're not, the friendliest in a lot of ways, but you get kind of used to it. But yeah,
We're
I
friendly
agree.
people.
We are friendly. The Bucketheads are friendly.
Well, it was cool of Harm's Way to like help you out in that situation.
Yeah, they were really understanding, and they were really like apologetic, and they didn't realize it was going to get that bad. So speaking of, we got to get to that interview and play it for you guys. Hear what Paula Blaze and Chris Mills had to discuss, and we will play a track from Harm's Way called Human Carrying Capacity, their latest single off the latest album. I'm forgetting the name of the album because I suck. Post Human, I believe, is the record.
So I could have put this on my top 10, probably. In
Yeah.
place of Mets.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mets. No offense.
This is the second time you've gone out of your way to be like, yeah, that album shouldn't have been on there.
Yeah, it was sort of a panic choice.
That's okay. It happens. Next
Yep.
year, you give yourself more time.
I'm starting
my phone
my
is
top
dying.
10 list right now.
Oh,
actually.
see, that's what I do.
It's
Start-
January, so bring it.
Get
2018.
it on. Get it on.
I'm starting to take note.
Post-tune.
So enjoy the interview. We will be right back with the closing of our pilot Bucket List Radio podcast. Listen in on this.
Hello?
Hey, Chris.
Hey, how's it going, Paul?
Good, man. Can you hear me okay? Everything's cool?
Yeah, you're a little bit distorted, but I can hear you for the most part.
Yeah, I've been doing some tests like in the last 30, 40 minutes, and I'm getting it's a little choppy, but when I listen to the audio afterwards, it seems pretty clear. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed everything's going to be cool. So yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, cool.
All right, cool. So we'll just get started. Cool.
Yeah, sounds good. Real quick, is this is the audio going to be released of this, or is it a transcription you're doing, or?
It's going to be audio. It's going to be
cool.
It's going to be for our podcast. I mean, listen, if there's a worst case scenario and the audio is not great, then we'll end up transcribing it.
Okay, cool. Sounds good.
All right, great. So, Chris, man, thanks a lot for sitting down with us and having a chat. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Have you been doing a lot of prep the last couple of days, I guess?
Yeah, it's definitely been a number of interviews each day. So a lot of my after work hours, a lot of my evenings have just been kind of doing interviews, doing press stuff. So yeah, it's all good though. We're excited about the record, excited to talk about it, excited to get it out to the rest of the world.
Great. All right, so let's get right to it then. So, Chris, of course, like for everybody listening, we're talking to Chris Mills from Harm's Way. They're releasing a new record on February 9th called Posthuman. So, listen, when you were getting into the writing of Posthuman, did you have any goals or direction in mind, and like for the music, and what kind of timeline were you working with for the principal writing of the record?
Yeah, like with each release, we don't really necessarily start with any kind of goals in mind. We kind of just let the writing process take shape pretty organically, and a lot of that happens just kind of when we're jamming and kind of in practice, just putting songs together. Someone comes with a riff, someone comes with an idea, we kind of work through it. But as far as timelines with this record, it took about a year and a half to kind of really get all the songs together, and partially that was due to just the extensive touring that we were doing on Rust, and also just us taking our time with the writing process. At times it felt grueling and long, and at times it felt awesome and quick. But yeah, as far as specific goals, we just wanted to keep progressing from Rust, just kind of trusting the creative process and letting the songs kind of take shape in an organic way. It always feels like, it takes the first few songs to kind of start to, like the first, getting through writing the first few songs of the record to truly understand the vibe of the record and kind of where the songwriting process is going. So, that kind of took some time, but, kind of once we had the ball rolling, things kind of took shape pretty quick, and then it was just kind of working through the songs, making sure they were razor sharp and focused, and kind of taking it from there. So yeah.
Did you guys wind up writing like a lot more songs that and whittling them down for the ones that you want to keep on the record?
Not so much. A lot of the songs kind of had different forms at some point, I would say. Like we cut a lot of fat from the songs, and we changed a lot of parts like over the course of that year and a half, whereas songs like Dissect Me on the record, or Sync looked way different like a year ago or a year and a half ago than they did like once we actually hit the studio. So we actually went into the studio with kind of 9 songs written that we felt really strong and good about. So when we were in the studio, we actually, during the pre-production phase, we had in mind like kind of coming up with that final song, that last song, and kind of writing it in the studio, which we did. And that was actually track 2 on the record, Last Man. So yeah, like we only kind of went in the studio with 9 songs and an idea for a 10th. And then while we were in the studio during the pre-production process, we worked through the songs even more and kind of came up with that last track that we feel kind of just brought the whole record together.
Okay, cool. So, in this record, you guys were also working with Will Putney, which is really awesome. Like, he's a renowned producer, and I want to know, I want to ask if what kind of contributions did he make? Did he make any contributions to the writing process? Did he help you guys refine the songs, or was he more of just like dialing in the tone and like more of a sound contribution, I guess, for the CD?
Yeah, he definitely helped with the production process, especially during pre-production. Once we got into the studio, we played through the songs, and prior to going into the studio, he was able to sit down with the songs for a bit because we kind of demoed out around 8 songs that we had finished. So he had some ideas for the tracks going in, and during the pre-production process, he would give some of his opinions, chime in here and there. But he was very, it was really awesome to have him there as kind of an additional set of ears, than simply just the 5 of us. because you can get obviously really just kind of real dialed in with kind of your own ideas of how you feel a song should go, or how you feel like the layout of a song should be, and he kind of helped us think outside the box as far as maybe how we structure some songs and how we position certain songs throughout the record. So yeah, he was a great resource to have there. He's real easy and real cool to work with as far as kind of working through ideas, and it was really cool to kind of do pre-production there because we had so many resources at our fingertips. We were able to kind of demo the songs on the spot, record the songs on the spot, play them back and actually like hear them, and kind of that sparked even more ideas and even more of kind of the songwriting process. So yeah, he was really cool to have around. He was great to work with. He was real chill, but at the same time, he definitely got the best performances out of each of us individually. Like really pushed us to just kind of get the best out of us with each kind of performance.
Awesome. So you've, I believe it was you that said this when you described the band's musical progression being refined by metal and industrial elements.
Sure.
And like in the last couple of weeks, I've went back and I've like listening to some of the stuff. I've seen you guys play live, and I fucking like you guys are such a powerhouse live. It's great. Musically, when you say that the sounds have been refined by industrial elements, I hear some of the like on CD, some of the industrial samples that get put in from here and there. But would you mind? Can you elaborate any more on maybe the industrial influence that you have that's kind of been that you guys say has been permeating the music?
Yeah, we've all been obviously fans of industrial music, growing up and whatnot, especially coming from Chicago, which has obviously been a hotbed of amazing industrial bands and just kind of spearing that industrial rock sound. So it's always had like a subtle influence on kind of the songwriting process, just because of the city we've grown up in and the bands we grew up listening to. So it's hard to say. It always just felt like really natural for us to just incorporate those elements. Like for us, like heavy music that we love is bands like Ministry and Nine Inch Nails and Godflesh, and so like when we're writing, those are big influences on us. So it's it's just slowly become more and more part of the sound, just because in many ways, like that's music that has influenced us. So I think with each release, is if you date back from maybe Isolation on, like those elements were slowly creeping more and more in to our sound, and I feel like over the years, or maybe I should say since Isolation, that refinement has just kind of happened organically with each release. I think obviously it's not an overt thing. It's more of a kind of textured, layered thing that I feel it just like adds more elements and more dynamics to our songs and to our sound. But it's just there because of who we are as people and given our just kind of musical tastes and backgrounds.
Right. Like say that like that heavy industrial backbeat that's so much a part of that music, which you guys have, that like heavy groove to you. So I can definitely see what you mean.
Yeah.
So aside from the music influence, can you give us any insight into the lyric to Posthumous?
Yeah. So James, our singer, does a lot of the kind of lyrical writing, but yeah, I think there's a lot of kind of dystopian ideas that one can find throughout the record. There's a lot of questioning of human nature across the record. There's a lot of questioning of the human condition throughout the record, but there's also a lot of self-reflection and self-exploration that James does, which I think is really awesome and very poetic. I think in many ways, like people see photos of us, they maybe see photos of James and they think, oh, it's just like this tough, muscular guy, but he's like an onion. He has a lot of layers. He's really complex, and I think that really shows in kind of his lyrics and his songwriting. So yeah, a lot of those themes people are going to find on the record. Like I said, it's going to be kind of this innate questioning of kind of human condition and like who we are and kind of where we stand in this world. And those, yeah, like I said, those themes are found throughout the record.
I read also in the steering away from the lyrics, but going back to a little bit to the musical elements, like in the press releases, you guys are referred to as metallic hardcore, as opposed to, which is something I actually really appreciate, because I know I've heard it, and I don't know if maybe you've heard it too, but people refer to you as metalcore. And I always feel like there's a distinction between the two, and it often gets conflated. And I just want to know, like, if you have any thoughts on the distinction between metallic hardcore versus metalcore.
Yeah, it's hard to say, and I think for so many people, it's just how you kind of interpret those labels. I mean, as like a punk rock kid, as a hardcore kid growing up, like, there was a certain stigma that came with kind of metalcore bands, or bands that were considered metalcore in like the early 2000s. It was considered almost like poser bullshit around like the scene that I grew up in, or like in the world I grew up in, so to speak. But now, like you hear like the term metalcore, and there's a little bit less of kind of that negative connotation that comes with it. I see that label kind of thrown around on us, in addition to like the metallic hardcore label. And honestly, like, it is what it is. Like I said, I think it's very much just kind of in the eye of the beholder, so to speak, and how the individual interprets it. For some people, metalcore is like the coolest thing, and it very much describes bands like, Disembodied and Harvest and the Hope Conspiracy and Margaret Brady, and like all these bands that are, considered pretty cool and incredible. But, for some people, maybe like metalcore, describes, like an era of bands that was considered kind of poserish and not cool and not hardcore. But like I said, I think it's just like kind of like based on the scene you grew up in. It's kind of in the eye of the beholder, and whatever labels people want to put on us, like, that's fine. It doesn't really bother us. It's we're pretty sound wise. It's kind of hard to classify us, so people are gonna try to interject and kind of define us as they see fit, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Speaking of metalcore, I guess to lead into the next question is that you guys have recently signed, like, arguably the label that helped launch metalcore into the quote unquote mainstream is Metal Blade Records.
Right.
When they picked up As I Dying, Unearth, and Black Dahlia Murder. I mean, Metal Blade's obviously, they've done, they're obviously one of the biggest metal labels on the planet. And, like, first of all, congratulations on the signing. That's great.
Thank you.
And I just want to know, so, like, how did that relationship sort of start? When were you first approached by Metal Blade, and were you surprised at all to be approached by them?
Yeah. So we were first approached by Metal Blade. It was very much through like Andy Williams of Every Time I Die. He was doing kind of A&R for them for a minute. He still might be. I'm not sure exactly, but he kind of facilitated the early conversations with us and Metal Blade Records. And at first it was super flattering and kind of caught us off guard. At the time Rust had just come out, and I don't know where we're kind of getting approached by, it wasn't just Metal Blade, but it was, a number of different kind of larger kind of household names, metal record labels. And it was super flattering and super surprising for us. But Andy was kind of the catalyst for that relationship. And, fast forward into more of the kind of Rust touring cycle, we were on tour with Black Dahlia Murder at the time. And, we were kind of going back and forth via email with Metal Blade, kind of just getting to know each other a bit, getting the conversations going. And they began to just kind of come out on, select dates of the tour just to kind of hang out, meet us, just kind of shoot the shit. And that kind of started the relationship. Fast forward maybe, 6 to 8 months after that, after going through kind of contractual negotiations and just kind of working on the, ins and outs of everything that comes with working with a record label. We ended up deciding to sign with the label and just kind of taking it from there. It was really cool. Again, like I said, it was super flattering and kind of surprising for us. But when we thought about it, it seemed like the next logical step for us in terms of kind of like some of our long-term goals as a band, which is obviously just, sharing our music with as many people as possible. And Metal Blade, and obviously their kind of imprint on kind of the aggressive music world, we felt could obviously give us, kind of that next step to, share our music with as many people as possible.
Do you feel this was like a really great, well, I mean, obviously Metal Blade's a bigger label than Death Wish, but I mean, was there ever at all a thought that you guys were going to re-sign with Death Wish? Or, I mean, how is your relationship with Death Wish and that camp still solid, and this was just like the next logical step for you?
Yeah, we're not as, at times we're not as kind of like long-term in our thinking as a band, like when Rust came out, we weren't necessarily thinking of, okay, like where do we go from here? Like what's the next record going to be like? We kind of very much live in the moment with kind of each release, so to speak. But at the time, like when Rust came out, if you would have asked us, do you think you'll be working with Death Wish again on your next release? We most definitely would have said, yeah. We had a great relationship, and we still do have a great relationship with Death Wish. And yeah, like with Posthuman, actually, Death Wish is actually working with part of the vinyl release of the record. They're actually doing they're releasing a limited color vinyl version of Posthuman. So we very much have a great working relationship still with Death Wish. We talk to Jake and Trey on a fairly regular basis. So our relationship with them has been great. It was great, and we're very much looking forward to continuing the work with them on Posthuman. So yeah.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about the touring now. So I mean, you said a little earlier that you guys had a very aggressive touring cycle for Rust, and like I have noticed that over the last couple of years, like I've seen you guys, or I've at the very least seen the packages that you guys have been a part of, and it really does like hit everything within the spectrum of between hardcore and death metal. For you as a performer, for Harm's Way, like how palpable is the difference in vibe between doing more metal tours and more hardcore tours, and do you place like a certain importance in going on like the quote unquote metal tours and hitting that demographic?
Yeah, there's obviously a way different vibe between doing your typical small club kind of hardcore tour versus your larger metal your smaller hardcore tour to your larger metal tour. They both have obviously amazing things that they bring to the table for all bands. But yeah, with doing hardcore tour, there's just a totally different vibe. It's a lot more intimate. It feels more community oriented, and that's something that we'll always try to stay true to and to still be a part of. No matter how many metal tours we're doing, or no matter how much we kind of get ingrained in the metal community. But like with your metal tours, it's awesome to have good sound. It's awesome to kind of play larger environments or larger clubs or larger venues, and it's been really cool for us. We especially on the Rust cycle, we had the pleasure of touring with some of our biggest influences like Soulfly and At the Gates, and those are awesome experiences for us, and it's definitely more we want to do in the future in those realms and kind of in those scenes, just to continue to kind of grow and branch out and just connect with different kind of groups of people and music fans as a whole. But yeah, with kind of the Posthuman cycle, like we're anticipating doing a lot more of that, and just like I said, trying to just connect with as many people as we can through our music as possible. But we're also doing a lot of hardcore stuff too, because that's where we're grounded. That's what we're rooted in. Once Posthuman is released, we're going on an extensive kind of full U.S. tour with Ringworm, Vane, and Queen's Way. Again, I'm just trying to kind of hit that hardcore market with a pretty diverse package. So yeah, we're definitely looking forward to that. But people can definitely anticipate us doing a lot of crossover stuff in the future.
I'm stoked to see you guys on that Ringworm tour, man. That's gonna be, it's your tour, but with Ringworm, so that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, definitely.
You guys, you guys have been obviously you tour consistently, and one thing this is just my observation, is that I feel like you definitely don't oversaturate yourselves. Like I've seen bands tour more, and that's not always a good thing. Do you guys feel you've kind of hit a sweet spot with your tour schedule, and maybe do you feel like you guys are going to tour more in the future, or like kind of keep a sort of consistent, like somewhat of a consistent schedule that you guys have been doing already in terms of numbers wise?
Yeah, we're definitely not trying to burn ourselves out and kind of do the same tour over and over again in the same markets. But one can definitely expect us to kind of keep the same sort of schedule that we've been maintaining since Rust came out. And obviously with Posthuman, people can definitely expect to see us on a number of different packages coming through their city. But yeah, we're not trying to burn ourselves out. We're trying to like maintain what we have, but continue to grow. And at the same time, we're trying to do stuff that we feel is credible and cool and worthwhile for us as a band to kind of maintain that growth. So yeah, with the Posthuman cycle, it's hard to say how much we will be out, but it'll definitely be a lot. We're just going to try to push this thing as much as we can.
Do you or any of the band members have personal commitments at home, like jobs and family and whatnot, that that you have to work around in terms of making your tour schedule? Like I know James is he's a PE teacher, right? I think.
Yeah.
James
is James is he teaches physical education and health, and he's in a fairly kind of flexible situation right now where he kind of substitutes when he's home, and actually teaches a number of different subjects in both the middle school and high school setting. I myself, I'm actually a social worker and therapist, and so when I'm home, I'm doing substance use counseling and mental health counseling in the city of Chicago, and luckily I'm in a pretty privileged position where I can kind of come and go with my touring cycle. So yeah, those are some of like the obligations we have. Like Bo, our guitar player, he works a fairly serious office job when he's home, and luckily like he has the flexibility to come and go. He's in a very supportive environment to do that. So we definitely have a number of different commitments at home, but we're luckily in positions where we can kind of hit the pause button on those things and kind of go do this music thing that that is very much a large part of our lives.
Oh man, but that's great to hear. I mean, there's so many bands that unfortunately you hear people having to make choices between the home life and the tour life, and I'm happy that you guys have found your way to be able to do both and have that balance. So I want to like just really briefly touch on your singer James for a second. So obviously, you see any photos of the bands, and you can tell like James is obviously a fitness enthusiast, and I've read that he does powerlifting competitions. Have you ever feared that maybe he would get injured on like doing his training, that it would that it might affect the touring, or has he ever gotten injured through lifting, and has it ever affected like doing shows at all?
Yeah, I mean he definitely has his fair share of injuries being in a a heavy lifting sport. He has lower back issues. He has some other physical health issues, and his back will flare up. He has disc herniation, stuff like that. But luckily at this point, it hasn't affected us to the point where he'd have to miss a show or miss a tour. But some nights maybe he's not jumping as much, or he's not going off as hard. And it could be because he's having some flare ups, or some of those injuries are kind of lingering. But ironically enough, I myself have my fair share of lower back issues, and actually our last European tour with Converge, I kind of had some disc herniation and a flare up, and I wasn't able to walk, and I actually had to miss the tour. We had to kind of find a drummer last minute, and luckily Matt Izzy from Home Wrecker was able to fill in in my place, to make that tour happen. But as far as James, he's been a trooper. He's been able to make any injury work as far as touring is concerned. And kind of knock on wood that he's able to kind of maintain that track record with us.
Yeah, I call it van back, man. After a couple of years touring in a van, everybody's backs goes to hell at one point.
Yeah, and that's totally it too. There's like some days we spend sitting, 8, 10, 12 hours. It's like worse than most office jobs for some people. And obviously you're not sitting in the most conventional ways. You're slouched. Your body's contorted in so many different ways, and it's just terrible for spinal health. Yeah. So we luckily tour with a trailer now, and we're able to like lay down and try to like make the best of some of those long drives. So we're just hoping to maintain our physical health as best as possible.
Yeah, I feel you, man. Like I toured for 5 years and I wrecked my back, and I had through every one of those years I was having back problems. So I feel the pain.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, man, we're gonna wind it down. So listen, this is gonna be the last question for you. So since we're bucket list music reviews, I got a bucket list question for you. So what would be your bucket list bands that you'd like to tour with that you haven't already?
Bucket list bands, man. It would be awesome to do some touring, with some of our biggest influences, which would be obviously, Godflesh, 9 Inch Nails, Ministry, bands like that. It'd obviously be really cool to kind of share the stage with. As far as metal band moving forward, you know what I mean? We love Carcass, we love bands like Entombed. It would be really awesome to tour with bands like that. But yeah, those are probably 5 of our top bands that we'd love to share the stage with.
Great, man, dude. Well, I wish you all the best with that, and I hope you do get to tour with them at one point or another. So, all right, Chris Mills from from Harm's Way, man. Thank you very much for sitting down and talking with us. We really appreciate it, and can't wait for February 9th to come around and your new record, Posthuman. Thanks again, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right.
Take care.
And we're back. So you just listened to an interview with Paul Ablaze and Chris Mills of, I'm just going to make sure I'm saying his name right.
I think Paul's a super good interviewer, actually. Yeah, that was really entertaining.
I love Paul.
Yeah. I don't know about you listeners out there, but there are quite a few moments in that interview that made me get a little smile or a chuckle. And
it was cute. It was
a lot of LOL moments.
See, they're a hardcore band, but they're sweethearts deep down. Chris Mills is a good dude.
He seems like a really nice guy. I'd be happy to, have him over for a beer sometime.
Yeah, it would be amazing. They could play in my living room.
Yeah, and when we were speaking about how huge they are, we were not speaking about height or weight or anything like that. We were actually talking about muscles.
Yes.
I'm not sure if that was clear.
I wanted to be my trainer.
Which there are a lot.
And
lots of muscles.
Which has led to the joke about Harm's Way, but spelled W-H-E-Y.
By Jesse.
Jesse specifically requested.
The protein powder. Ha ha ha. And of course, Harm's Way, guys, we're just teasing you.
Yeah.
No hard feelings.
We think you're great. I'm a huge fan. I have all your records, and I'm very stoked about this. And very happy to have it be part of our pilot Bucket List Radio episode, which will be streamable on SoundCloud and on bucketlistmusicreviews.com. And you get to now hear us speak for longer than an hour with annoying ads and things in the middle on the radio. Now we can talk as much as we want and play mostly whatever we get to review.
Yeah.
and yeah.
We actually have a little bit less freedom as to what we can play.
Yeah.
Well, copyright issues, but that's something that Bucket List takes really seriously. Is not stepping on any of the artists' toes and only playing stuff that we've got permission to play, and of course promoting all the awesome underground bands that maybe haven't made it big yet that we're super stoked to share with you.
And this episode there was a lot of talking because we were recapping 2017, but future episodes will include a lot more music submissions. It'll be sort of the same idea as our radio show where we will discuss artists we reviewed throughout the month, because this is generally going to be we're going to turn bi-weekly eventually, but for now we're going to do once a month. And it'll just be a recap of what's been on bucketlistmusicreviews.com throughout the month. And we'll talk about that with you guys. Hopefully this is something that you're enjoying, and spread the word. You know, we want followers, we want listeners, we want the bands to get exposure through this. And yeah, it's just a fun, neat way of going over what's been on the website rather than just always reading stuff. You get to hear our personalities a little bit more now.
So are we going to go through a little bit the other Bucketheads top 10 lists?
Well, my phone died, so
Okay.
briefly, let's do this. So we've got some weird ones here.
Okay, so at the top here we've got Scott.
Yeah, from Australia. We have
from Australia, way down under.
That's good.
I'm not going to go into that too much. He's got the Melvins on here, which is pretty cool. Prophets of Rage. I didn't hear that record. I don't know.
You know what? Neither did I.
I know a lot of people were talking about how great their live show was.
Yeah.
It's too. I would really like a full blown Rage reunion.
I would too. That's the one band. Rage Against the Machine are the one band left on my bucket list that I have not seen yet, that I'm waiting to see. So
Bucket list, shameless plug.
Yeah, I really hope it happens.
He's got a couple of really good choices on there, actually.
Yeah.
Some that I probably would echo. Other than the Melvins, Slow Dive, self-titled from this year, was incredible if you're into the shoegaze kind of post-rock stuff. Dead Cross was a really solid
we reviewed
hardcore
that
album.
one, actually.
Yep.
We just reviewed that one.
The Wire, or just Wire rather.
Not to be confused with the amazing TV show.
No, but super old school punk band. And this is another comeback album in 2017 where they hadn't released anything for at least a decade. And
Also 311, who I'm surprised I didn't realize.
I didn't realize either, and I love
311 are one of those 90s bands that I've kind of been hoping would come back and make a new record.
Well, they played Rockfest last year.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's why they were really touring that album. So.
And the Feelies. That the record In Between, Scott Andrews has it on his top 10, and that is also a super good release.
And I was gonna say, because you were mentioning that was it the Bell Witch record that there was no guitars, it was just bass.
Yep, bass and organ.
And organ. Royal Blood are another nothing like Bell Witch, but they're another band that's just bass and drums. They're a little bit more straight ahead rock and roll, but they're really cool if you like kind of radio heavy rock.
They're actually not too bad, yeah.
Their singles from this record are really, really solid, really catchy and really heavy at the same time.
And showcasing some of the diversity of the bucket list top 10. we have
Stacy,
photographer Stacy, who loves pop music and isn't afraid to tell us.
You know what?
And you know what? That's awesome.
So
hey,
she's got.
I have nothing against pop.
She's got the new Ed Sheeran record on there, and I really like Ed Sheeran.
Yeah.
Shape of You.
Really likes Ed Sheeran.
It was one of my favorite songs this year. I can't even lie. There's another. The first song on that record is called Eraser. If you are a hip hop fan, that is a really, really great track, and a lot of people don't see Ed Sheeran is. What do you guys? What's up?
Oh, I was just trying to pass it so Liz could see the list.
Sorry.
As well.
Oh no, I'm good.
Yeah. Ed Sheeran.
A lot of people don't look at Ed Sheeran as a rapper, but that is a really solid rap track. It's really good. It's got a great acoustic guitar line. He's just a great musician.
I'm not a fan.
The rest of the record was a little forgettable.
I think it's complete cheese, honestly. I think he's just cute, and people love how cute he is. I don't see the big deal about Ed Sheeran, but I understand people like him, and that's it.
He played here in Montreal recently, and
sold out like that.
It's sold out, but as someone who witnessed a lot of the audience of that show, I didn't attend it. Okay. But from my work, I work really close to the Bell Center, and the audience, I would say average age was between 12 and 16 years old. And their moms. And the mother-daughters had a real great time at the Ed Sheeran show.
So if you want to pick up moms, go to an Ed Sheeran show. It's a great place for that.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's Sid's advice for you, for anyone out there who's trying to pick up hot MILF.
Just get that MILF action.
I also I have to give Stacey kudos for her choice of Steel Panther.
Yeah.
Because that is a really hilariously, awesomely fun record that came out last year.
They're always awesomely fun.
I'm not surprised that she that she put that record on there because I reviewed that show when they came to Montreal and she was snapping it. And she was dying the whole time. She could not breathe. It was really funny. They're really funny live.
They're awesome.
But, she is a hardcore, die-hard fan of that band. Good record.
Yeah.
Great record. If you're into, like, the comedy, more
Glam
lighthearted.
rock stuff. Yeah.
It's not like it is glam rock, but it's not taking itself seriously glam rock. Like,
What's the band with the movie?
it's Spinal Tap. It's Spinal
exactly.
Tap.
It's like a real live, actually performing and touring Spinal Tap.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's partly what makes them so awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, and actually, she's got Paramore on there. Paramore.
I don't like Paramore.
Yes, Paramore is a band that I can't say that I like them, but what's crazy is that just going through social media,
They're so popular.
many people whose musical taste I really respect were calling Paramore's album one of the best albums of 2017.
I can name 5 people right now that listen to the same music that I do, and they love Paramore. I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to Paramore and see what the big deal is about. No, boring.
It doesn't tickle my fancy at all.
I've been in a band that has covered Misery Business. It's a fun song.
I'm sure your version was better than Paramore.
It wasn't. It's a really tight song. It's got some really cool rhythms going on. It's really fun. It's really fun music. I haven't heard much of what they've done recently. I haven't heard the new record, but I understand the appeal.
Okay.
But what I like about reading Stacey's list is, like, at first glance, and I mean, the 4 of us who are hosting this podcast have a fairly, like, we've got a lot of crossover in terms of bands that we all mutually like, and we all kind of dig the heavy with a few, outliers here and there. But Bucketlist as a whole is such a diverse crowd, and these top 10 lists are such a great way of showcasing, like, the complete different styles of music that cross our radar, and, like, I just think it's fantastic.
It is. It's really interesting to go through this list. And again, we've gotten some comments from readers saying, "Oh, I discovered a bunch of new music reading these lists because we're so diverse."
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go to Thomas's list now.
Yeah,
let's go to
Tom.
Tom's. He's got. I actually don't know any of these bands.
Tom is one of our photojournalists or photographers.
Paradise Lost is awesome. He also chose Paul Bearer.
Right, and he's got Converge on there too.
Converge, yeah. There's a couple there that I think Elder, their new album is fantastic.
Reflections of
Amon Ra's also, like, he has a really, really good list actually.
He really likes the heavy stuff.
He does.
He likes heavy, dark,
I was gonna
morose.
say when you mentioned earlier that he likes to shoot metal shows because that's just what he loves. Like he doesn't. I've had him shoot shows outside of his, I guess, his element or his. His
well,
usual,
we shot Thundercat together.
Yeah,
and I mean. You can't hate on Thundercat. Like, the guy's an incredible musician. He had an incredible trio, but the crowd there was decidedly uninterested in the show.
Right, they
largely
just wanted to party.
They just wanted to party, and no disrespect to I Love Neon because they know how to throw a party. Those guys are great. They're one of the best up and coming promoters in the city, I think. But the crowd was uncomfortable.
I get it. It's unfortunate when
sometimes crowds can make or break a show.
They could.
And
you know what?
It's really what their expectations
Absolutely. Like I was saying, the Yellow Wolf crowd almost killed it for me. Almost. But I just ignored them and I got into it and yeah. So.
But I mean, in this case, and of course Tom's not here to defend his list or talk about how he selected anything, but he also introduced me to some really interesting, because my family's Finnish, half Finnish, and he introduced me to some really interesting Finnish folk music.
Oh, okay.
So I think he
does have a broad
as a true Buckethead,
he does.
His taste is very broad.
Yeah.
But I think if ultimately we would have to ask him, how did he choose this top 10? Because what I've learned tonight in discussing all of this is that we all had a different process.
Right.
Mine was kind of like a random process.
Yeah.
Whereas Jesse and Liz, you guys were like very methodical. Like you started your prep for the list right away.
Yeah.
And Sid, you went through what you.
Kate doesn't even remember what I said.
I do. I'm not. Well, I don't want to waste time on air talking about how much I remember. But buddy, I gotcha.
All right.
And Danny.
Let's go to Danny. Danny doesn't like music.
Country boy. Danny is our one and only true country music fan, and he's always nervous when I ask for top 10 lists because a lot of the music he listens to, which is country, is old. They don't really, he's like a lot of the newer country stuff he's not really that into, so he struggles a little bit with this, but I actually just said, I took out the whip and I said, you're compiling a list this year, shut up, do it, and he did, and he was very surprised at how much music he actually listens to besides country.
So Dragon Force is on there.
Yeah,
he shot the Dragon Force show.
He did. That's when he officially fell in love with them.
And because he shot an interview with them as well, right?
He did. Yeah.
So I think that's how that happened. So if you want Danny to listen to your band, and Danny's a talkative guy, he will talk your ear off.
Yeah.
So if you want him to listen to your band, he's an easy guy to talk to. Just strike up a conversation with him. Tell him you're in a band. He will listen to it because Danny didn't listen to any metal before joining Bucketlist.
Yeah.
He was one of those guys who was like, I don't like the screaming.
Yeah.
I understand the music, but I can't really get into it. But then you watch him at the show, and he's kind of like, okay.
He does make that face.
Okay. He's also got Papa Roach on there, so he's got a ways to go.
Sorry, Danny.
A huge ways to go. Papa Roach, come on.
But he's got the Foo Fighters on there, so
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we can go to the next one.
Rob is another one that he's our electronica guy. He goes to most of our electronica shows. He listens to a ton of electronica and rap. Those are his two big things. He has a very open mind when it comes to music.
He's got Propaganda on there.
Exactly.
Which is cool.
I think that I know because Rob originally comes from Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Propaganda are Winnipeg boys.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's another one that could have replaced Matt's on my list. Because again, I
They're
did
just
not
taking a
realize.
bashing tonight.
Well, because it's on my list and I feel responsible for telling you guys why I put it there. And really, it was just kind of okay, I need a number 10. So I picked it. But I did not realize
So
that
you guys,
Victory
Mets,
Lap,
if you're listening, you made it by default.
Sorry, Mets. Not really. Sorry, not sorry. Because Propaganda's album Victory Lap, which Rob put on his top 10 list, is a freaking amazing album. It's really, really good. And Propaganda has been around forever, since at least the early 90s. And I find that they're one tried and true punk band. They haven't changed their style all that much,
right?
But it still works for them, and they still manage to be captivating even after all these years of being in your face and political. And their lyrics are so intelligent.
But their music is also still really interesting, even though it's just straightforward punk. It's always engaging and it's always changing, and it's cool to listen
boring.
to.
And I think that's a really good thing when a band can maintain their similar sort of style and their personality without losing anything or sacrificing anything, but still somehow do the same thing but just a little bit better every time.
Right.
That's one band that I think really accomplished that.
And it's really hard as a punk band to do that.
Yeah.
As we were
As
saying
we
earlier,
said before,
yeah, it usually tends to kind of stay the same. And we were discussing a certain local band earlier on this evening that I won't name the name yet, but anyways, I won't go on with this. I think it's going to be a topic for another time. Yeah,
we'll write some rants about it.
Yeah, we will.
But
rants are coming back,
it's really
guys.
hard to differentiate yourself, and I think over time, Propaganda has consistently impressed me every time.
Yeah,
but he's got. I just want to throw, because he's also got Migos on there, and Migos are one of the most, I think, divisive acts that have come out in recent years, just because the whole mumble rap craze, it's either you really get it and you really understand it, or you wish it would go away.
Yeah.
And Migos are kind of like the flag bearers for that style, right? It's that really, really dirty drawl, kind of almost alyrical music, which is strange in rap. But from what I understand from Migos, and I've listened to the record, actually, I actually enjoyed it against my better judgment. But it's a cool record, and it's cool to hear a style that is decidedly lyrical going in a direction that's much more atmospheric.
Right.
and they've kind of, you know, skr and whatever, and Jesse, you'll love it. But to be able to be so recognizable just from 2 little sound effects, not even words, to be so iconic already, like, that's really cool. Sorry.
Well, Rob has also, he's super into reggae and dub.
Right.
And one of the ones that's kind of a departure from some of our other top 10 lists is Lee Scratch Perry, who, once again, kind of a comeback album because he hasn't released all that much in the preceding years. But apparently I haven't heard this one myself, but apparently this is a really, really good album. And he's also got Bonobo on there.
Yeah,
super
right.
interesting. Like, I don't even know how to categorize them.
But they're like one of the progenitors of like the modern electronic sound, aren't they? Like,
yeah, but they're so instrumental. It's
Yeah.
not all like synth and like kind of created sound. It's like actual live. Like,
Yeah.
they do stuff live. I'm sort of feeling out a good way of talking about this, but
oh no,
that was
I
good.
get it. That was a good way of putting it. And then we've got Danielle, one of our editors. And her list is very interesting. She surprised me with this one a little bit because I didn't realize that she was such a fan of stoner rock. So I'm very happy with that.
She's,
yeah.
I think she's the only one who included that Rise Against record.
Oh yeah, she's a huge Rise Against
Yeah.
fan. Her and Matthew Perry are both huge fans. So
Yes.
yeah. Flogging Molly she loves. Like Danielle is usually, from what I understood, she was more into like the punk rock, classic punk
and
rock,
ska.
and ska.
Yep.
And so to see like King Gizzard on there and to see Electric Lords on there, it's
Def Radio.
It's pretty, and Japandroids. She picked Japandroids as well. It's pretty awesome.
We're not even mentioning that she's got half of Oasis on there.
Yeah.
Another
Which
record
half? O or Asis?
I don't even like Oasis, so I can't say the better or worse half.
What's the story, morning?
That is the title track from one of their albums. Fact. Oasis are so. Sorry?
Nothing.
Oasis are so fascinating to me just because their feud is. It's like reality television, but they don't have their own show. I think they should.
Yeah.
I know they hate each other,
Yeah.
but I think there is money to be made.
What's
More
his
money
name?
to be made than the music that they're making that I don't think anybody actually cares about. Like, have either of you listened to High Flying Circus, whatever, Noel
I have
Gallagher's?
not. He's coming here though soon.
Fantastic.
So
We'll probably review it.
we are going to be reviewing the show if we get the media accreditation, but we did sign up for it, so that's going to be an interesting one. I think he played Oshiaga, I think.
One of them this year had a guy playing a potato on stage.
A potato?
Oh, okay.
Peeling a potato in front of a microphone, which was my favorite thing of the year.
Okay.
How did it sound? What exactly does a potato sound like?
Yeah, a little bit like. I don't know.
I'm not sure if the microphone picked that up. So that's a potato for you guys.
And you be the judge of whether I was actually peeling a potato or not. Next, Gabby, one of our photographers, has Newfound Glory.
Yeah.
She's also got the Ed Sheeran,
And
but
the
Newfound
Dragon
Glory,
Force.
and the Dragon Force. Oh, she's got that Arcade Fire album that I can't get behind.
I'm not a fan of
everything
Arcade Fire.
now.
Weezer too. The new Weezer is a bit.
The new
interesting.
Weezer is weird.
It is weird. It's not
weird.
Yeah,
It's not the Weezer you grew up with.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with them. but
However,
I mean,
in true Weezer fashion, they are once again releasing another record this year. It's going to be the Black Album.
right?
So if you're keeping track, and I don't think I am, they've got the Blue Album, they've got the Pink Album, they've got the White
Weezer?
Album.
Yeah.
They've gone through almost all the colors, so now they're going on to the shades. And Weezer just don't give a fuck about what anyone thinks.
No.
So that'll be cool to hear. I'm always excited to hear a new Weezer album because it's
like-
always going to be something
Exactly.
different.
Like if you're a Weezer fan, past a certain point in albums, then you're just a Weezer fan. And
Yeah.
everything they do is gonna be awesome for you.
And I don't think Pacific Daydream was bad necessarily. I think there were some forgettable tracks on it, but I think it was a nice experiment because they've never really sounded that produced. And I know a lot of people say that they're overproduced and whatever, but
I don't find they're overproduced though.
But it was a very, very like California style pop record,
right?
Which is strange to hear coming from Weezer. So that was cool.
Dominic Abate.
I like his list a lot.
He's got a really, like, him and I always got along really well because we have very, very similar tastes. So he chose Bell Witch too.
Yep.
And Converge.
And Converge.
And Amon-Ra.
And Paul Bearer.
Paul Bearer. Merkur. He chose Merkur. He absolutely loved that record.
It was a weird record.
It's an interesting one. She's so freaking talented though.
So Merkur is from, I believe, Norway.
Yeah. Norway.
And she has this like crazy haunting,
super haunting.
Her vocals are super talented.
Yeah,
but it's an intense listen.
Yeah,
like, that
it
album.
is.
Yeah,
you have to be in a specific mood, I think, for it because I don't know. I feel like it gets under my skin in a good way.
Yeah.
Like, but it's I don't know. It's hard to explain, but
they're like Blair Witch put to music.
Yes.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes, and Dom's always been into that kind of music. And,
yeah.
One
He's also got. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say one of the albums that made it on Dominic's list is that I think I'm surprised didn't make it onto more lists, but off the microphone we were talking about them a little bit, and I think they're like a really tragically underrated at this point, but they're still pretty new, and that is Big Brave.
I was just gonna say that record is really cool.
Yep,
it's really cool, and their image is really cool too. They have their kind of marketing down in terms of logo and what have you. But that record, that one kind of blew me away.
It's really intricate. It's heavy.
Yeah.
It's not too much anything,
but
and
it's
not
big
enough
sound.
anything.
And
it's
there's
a really
so,
big sound.
And it's really hard with drone to get into it. Like, it's a very, very acquired taste, and I feel like with Big Brave, they are bringing drone to the masses. Like, more and more people are getting open to them, open to that style. I saw them open for Sleep last year, I think it was.
Yep.
Were you there or no?
I had to work.
Oh, right.
And
that was a
crying
disaster.
while
Yeah,
I was
that was so sad for them. I felt so bad for them because the sound guy fucked up, and during their set, which obviously with drone, it's a slow start. You have to get into it. You have to get, like, it just takes time for the whole thing to build. And right in the middle of their set, the sound guy fucked up and blasted some death metal, like, I guess on a playlist or something.
Okay.
And the band just stood there like completely in shock, like, oh my god, he just messed up our set. And it went on for like a good minute, and like, I guess he was like this, like, oh my god, like playing with the whatever he was playing with, and everybody was like, and then he stopped it. The music finally stopped, and the band had to start over, and everybody just clapped and cheered for them, I guess, to like encourage them, because they were so embarrassed, and you can tell they were so pissed, and I don't blame them, because you can't fuck up drone like that. It's a meditative music, like, you have to like get into a mood, and that was just bad.
And to have like ostensibly the most offensive genre of music on the senses, right? To have just like death metal start blasting, which I love death metal, but
of course, but it was just not the right time.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't working.
Yeah, like you wouldn't want a death metal just to randomly appear midway through someone's eulogy at a funeral.
Exactly.
For example.
Like, there's a time and a place, guys. A time and a place. And in the middle of Big Brave is not the time or the place.
I bought their record that night just because that was when I first fell in love with them.
It's a really cool record.
It is, yeah.
He's got the new Cradle of Filth on there.
Yeah.
I haven't heard it. I interviewed Danny Filth.
Yes, that's right.
Super nice guy.
That was a great interview. Anyone out there listening, you can find that on bucketlistmusicreviews.com. Sid had a great interview with Danny Filth.
He's a really, really, you expect him to be kind of like a scary dude, but he's not. He's like, he's a really, really soft-spoken kind of. And the label was like, okay, it's got to be 15 minutes, like, that's it. But he was like, he would have talked for an hour if I hadn't been busy and had to leave.
Wow.
He was just going, he was like, yeah, you're my last interview of the day, we can go as long as we want, whatever. Awesome. And he was just going on about the influences for the album and whatever would come up. He was just one of the nicest guys. And he's got Lana Del Rey, who I enjoy. I just want to throw this out there. She's nominated for a Grammy for Best Vocal Performance. which is the last thing that I would nominate Lana Del Rey for. I like her music.
Don't listen to the Grammys.
She's got such a weak little voice. Anyway, so Lana Del Rey's on there. There you go.
Then we have Lee, bucket list writer, who's a huge fan of the 90s.
Yeah, so Lee's got Beck on there.
Yeah.
Kudos for that.
He also does have Beck on there. He's got an interesting. Lee is a very. He's very much into the hard rock, the alternative, I guess, 90s rock.
Right.
Cut Copy is on there. Depeche Mode, which honestly, like, I keep forgetting that they just released a new album. I saw them this year, or rather 2017, and it was an interesting show. I'm a huge fan of theirs. It's a lot darker than when I saw them the first time. So I'm assuming the new album is very dark, because I think they did play a lot of it, because I didn't recognize a lot of the songs.
Okay.
I haven't listened to the new album yet. I'm not a very good fan.
But they do have a very kind of gothy sound.
Well, I suppose, like, they're very new wavy. They come from the 80s. They have a ton of different sounds, so they've been around forever. And then what else? He also has
got the new Queens.
Yeah, the new Queens, Beck, Japandroids as well.
He's got the Shins on there, who are a band. I don't really listen to them, but
well
see, what I like about Lee's top 10 is that it has on it, I would say, like 7 out of 10 bands that for me are super nostalgic. Like, I'm a huge fan of the War on Drugs. I like much of what Beck has done. Future Islands is another, like, alt rock band that has had, like, a pretty big following over time. I've sort of lost track of them over time. Queens of the Stone Age, Depeche Mode. Cut Copy is super, super fun Australian pop, like techno pop stuff. Yeah. But the Shins, for me, are like, wow, they're still making records? Like, I had no idea that they put out a new one.
Again,
it's like a time travel.
Yeah,
like,
we're time traveling.
Let's go back to 2003.
Bands are coming back.
So thanks, Lee. Maybe catch up a little bit.
And then Justin, our Saskatchewanian.
I think that's the term, yeah.
Saskatchewanderer, I like that.
He's got freaking Primus on there, who I also forgot released a record this year.
Joey,
I love his taste.
Joey brought Primus as well.
Yeah.
But Single Mothers is his number one. I don't know if you because again,
we don't rank.
I didn't. Mine wasn't in order.
We don't have to do them in order. I don't think you put them in order either.
His number one on the list, Single Mothers, is a super great album.
They were here not too long ago. Yeah, and apparently they put on a fantastic show. So
another one is Brockhampton that people will not shut up about. I haven't heard it yet, but apparently they're redefining hip hop. So if you're interested, they're a collective. And everybody tells me that they're very, very cool. So I'm glad to see that one on the list. That adds credence to the internet.
And he also has the new Flatliners there.
He's got the new Flatliners. He's got Thundercat on there. So
yeah, I think you guys
he's
were
my
the
boy.
only ones, or there was more than that.
I think we were the only ones. Which is too bad because it's a really cool record.
Yeah.
Comeback Kid. We said Comeback Kid, right?
Yeah.
He's got the Converge on there too.
Yeah.
Jesse went at length. You already spoke. You've got the Kendrick on there, which is awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Joey.
Joey has an interesting one too.
Joey's got a cool one. Joey's got the new Jay-Z record on there.
Yeah,
which,
he saw them and the new Horror too, and the new Horror album. They put on a fantastic. They played Turbo House as well, and I'm so bummed that I missed it, but it was sold out, and I don't feel comfortable going to Turbo House when it's sold out.
Right.
But they're wild live. They just go crazy, and I don't know if you guys are too familiar with them. You probably both like them. But they're doing well here now because Heidi from Evenco discovered them at where was it? At South the SXSW to put it in short in Texas. She discovered them there and she started finding ways to book them here in Montreal. So they played, I think, Osheaga and they played Turbo House, and now they have fans here thanks to Heidi. But Joey was at that show and he completely lost his shit when he saw them. So,
cool.
Yeah.
He's also got Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah. Well, you know what? People
like
I like Cannibal Corpse. They're funny.
Yeah, man.
They are hilarious.
Ace Ventura.
Yeah.
It's another band that's really like kind of been doing the same thing consistently the whole time.
But it works.
They are the Slayer of death metal.
Yeah,
they really are.
Yeah.
I actually I'm not a huge Cannibal Corpse fan. Like the whole shock metal thing is like not really my vibe, but I actually really liked Red Before Black.
Yeah.
Like
I agree.
Like I'm a huge Slayer fan, and I understand that if I'm going to buy a new Slayer record, it's going to be exactly the same thing I've heard from every other record for the past 30 years. You know what I mean? But I'm into it. I want to hear it.
Yeah, we don't have to go through everyone because we have a huge team.
Yeah, we're just we're looking through, and we're about halfway through the 26 Bucketheads who have submitted.
So just to give an idea here, like we can name a couple off of each person. So Leah, I think we're at Leah now, the third editor from New York. She's also got a very similar taste to Stacy. And
she's got that new Anti-Flag record on there.
She listens to a lot of punk rock. Yeah, she does have the new Anti-Flag. Yeah, and then Ed Sheeran again. There you go.
The Dystopian Project.
So that's a few now. We've seen the Ed Sheeran one on.
Yeah, I'll never understand. And Sean,
Eraser is a great song. I will throw that out there. If you're interested in checking it out, it's a really, really good song.
And Sean, also, he's got...
he agreed with you on the Kendrick, yeah.
Yeah, he's got Weezer there as well, LCD Sound System.
He really liked this record, the Don't You Mean People.
Oh, yeah, he did. He gave it a perfect score. Don't You Mean People is a band that submitted their record to us a while ago. They're an unsigned band. I am forgetting where they're from, but he gave that album a perfect score, so they made it to his top 10, which is
He's
really
also
awesome.
got an interesting choice on there, Ariel Pink, dedicated to Bobby Jameson. So if there are any Ariel Pink fans out there, definitely check this one out. We're sort of running out of time, so I won't get into the whole backstory, but there is this really interesting backstory behind that album. It's a concept album. Ariel Pink is a super interesting musician if you're into like the garage and weird like rock stuff as well. So yeah, I again could have possibly put that on my list.
Yeah, very cool. That's okay.
But it's not my favorite Ariel Pink album, but it's just a really, really interesting concept album.
Right.
Eric, one of our oldest photographers, has Papa Roach on there again.
Queens of the Stone Age.
For some reason, people liked Papa Roach this year, so just...
It's because they met the singer, and they're all of the and
his name is Kobe Dick. Mr. Dick, if you're nasty.
I'm sure he's...
Is a lyric.
Apparently he's really nice.
I'm sure he's really nice.
Yeah, apparently he's really nice.
He tears himself open. He sews himself shut.
We're all human.
And again, going with some fan favorites here, Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
We've got Kendrick Lamar and Queens of the Stone Age.
Yep.
He's got the new Body Count record on there, which respect.
He really likes that one. Motionless in White, too, he absolutely adores.
That new Stone Sour record I wasn't crazy about, but
okay.
Opinions are opinions.
Opinions are opinions.
Matthew,
our ska punk nerd, has a very, very strange list this year.
It's very eclectic.
Yeah,
it's very eclectic. He's got Sean on there. Sean are really, really, really cool. If you're into that kind of Animals as Leaders style, really techie kind of melodic metal.
Then he also has Creator.
Creator are fucking awesome.
They are, but it's like different from the rest of his list.
But I like to see some old school thrash on any list, and you had a thrash band on there. He's got Creator on there. I fucking love Creator.
Yeah,
they're really good.
They're really good. I think he reviewed their latest record too. That's the one that he reviewed, I believe.
Yeah. He's also got Darkest Hour on there.
Yeah.
He's got Brand New on there. And John Mayer.
Yeah.
Everyone's favorite soft-spoken.
John Mayer.
Just a great guitarist.
And Aaron, he went very underground with his list. Electric Lord, second person on our team to vote for that record, which I almost put them on my list. And I came really close because I really, really love that album.
Yeah.
It's just so groovy, but I put Kendrick instead. But Electric Lords is definitely something to check out. We've been playing a lot of them. We played them on our last radio show on CJLO, and we could play a track from theirs too, maybe to end this podcast.
One thing I will say though is that he's got the Barrelheads record on there.
Yeah.
And I know that they're not together anymore, and I'm really sad.
I'm not sad. I'm angry.
They've got their shit. I get it. But Mike, John, boys, if you're listening, just know that you're gone, but you're not forgotten.
Absolutely. I'll kick them to the curb and make them get back together.
Speaking of a band that's played with the Barrelheads that are still together, and one of their writers writes for one of their members writes for us. Keenan's here with
Keenan. So Keenan from Summerled.
Yeah.
He, writer for Bucketlist, also picked Anti-Flag, Weezer, same ones. He also's got Alice Cooper on there, which is freaking...
That's a fun record.
It is.
Paranormal.
Murphys, Japan Droids again, Foo Fighters again.
Taylor fucking Swift.
You know, fuck that. Move on. Anyone who likes Taylor Swift, no thank you.
He's on our team, Liz.
Whatever.
You have to give his opinion credence. He's also got the Chainsmokers on there. Did we say that?
No, I think that's the first Chainsmokers.
Well, looking through all these lists, it's pretty crazy how many similarities there are. But
in the end, yeah.
I really like seeing the lists that totally deviate, and if you know, like, because we all know each other to a certain extent, it's sort of predictable sometimes, like, so-and-so will pick heavy and so-and-so will pick pop and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I found this year everybody surprised me a little bit.
Same here.
And,
but it was I liked it. I really enjoyed putting this list together, collecting everyone's list, because I was just like, oh, I haven't heard of this one. And this is interesting. I didn't expect them to like this one. And it was really cool to see this.
Yeah.
And you know, yeah.
I think
so. Should we end it off there, or are we?
Well, we have a couple more. Yeah. So let's just say.
Jamie picked one band 10 times.
Foo Fighters.
It was Foo Fighters.
She liked the Foo Fighters.
Yeah, she did.
She is a writer of ours. She does review music.
She doesn't review as much anymore. She's more handling our promo now. She's my promo girl. Yeah, she's completely fallen in love with Concrete and Gold.
Only liked the Foo Fighters this year. That was it. That was all. No other band released anything worth listening to.
To make someone's top 10 list 10 times.
Yeah, it is.
So,
very much
so. Mr. Grohl. You know, I said to someone the other day that he was the king of rock and roll, and someone said,
God.
"Well, yeah, but that's Elvis." And I said, "Yeah, but you can pass the torch, you know."
I'm sure he would be extremely flattered if he heard that.
I'm sure he would punch me in the face and say that it's Elvis.
He probably would, but Grohl is he's such a humble person that he would maybe cry if he heard that. So, yeah.
Jason liked a lot of metalcore. That's not fair. Jason actually had some pretty cool records here. He's got the new
metalcore.
They are not. He's got intervals on there. Intervals are really cool.
They're metal. They're part of that whole scene, though. Like they still
say what you will. They are instrumental. I don't know if they have a singer now. I haven't heard the whole record, but they're a really cool band. They're really interesting. Volumes are also really cool. I know they're metalcore. Leave me alone. He's got Converge on there.
Yeah, well, there was
Hate all you want.
One that made me laugh was Ben's. Ben is one of our newest members of the team. And he made me laugh because he put his own band on his top 10. He put Mooch. Ben is in a band called Mooch. And I was like, you know what? That's cool. Because like people were making fun of him saying, you know, shameless self-promotion, blah, blah, blah.
But why the hell not?
But you know what? I like he's the farthest thing from egotistical or full of himself and or what have you.
So
and
he truly believed
his band is
that his
awesome,
local band.
They are really good.
They're fucking awesome, and you know what? They're gonna do well. And he's very dedicated. He's very willing, and he's young. So I see this working, and I thought it was adorable that he put his own band on his top 10. He put also Queens and
he's got Royal Blood on there, Prophets of Rage,
and one that made it onto my list, and then I switched out the wrong thing.
Put Mets instead.
Oops. It's Crystal Fairy, self-titled, and Crystal Fairy is essentially like a kind of weirdo rock and roll supergroup. So it's got members of the Melvins and a bunch of other bands.
Yeah.
And it's not a really straightforward listen, but it's super entertaining. And if you haven't already, you should totally check that one out. And then we've got Jordan, who pretty much
same thing.
Listens to. It's like she got in my computer and listened to everything.
She's got Neil Young on there though.
Yeah.
So that's a thing.
Well, something that is pretty fun with these with these top 10s, even if we can't play all the songs because of copyright issues and whatever, most of this stuff is available on Spotify. Yeah. So you could actually go through and make yourself
a playlist,
a top 10 playlist, and check out everything that's on our top 10 list.
Or we can make a playlist. And you can just download it. Not download it, but like grab it from us.
Yeah.
Maybe work on that.
That'd be cool.
Coming weekend, or one of us can.
Stay tuned on bucketlistmusicreviews.com for any news.
For anything.
Last but certainly not smallest, we've got Paul.
who you heard earlier interviewing Harm's Way.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
and
very own
Paul.
Ablaze.
I you know what, I was a little bit dismissive of his list earlier, and not in a bad way, but I said metal, Jamiroquai, and that's not fair, because he's got Lights on there too, which is cool.
Kind of shocked me a little
That's
bit.
very shocking,
'Cause
but
it's
it is
so
very cool.
poppy.
But you know what, Lights has associated herself with the metal scene. Like she was on Bring Me the Horizons. There is a hell of a great record. Whatever you say, that record is fucking awesome. They lost it a little bit after that, but that is a really cool record, really different. And Lights is on there a couple times. And I saw them play. They toured with that record, and she came out and sang with them for a couple of songs.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was really, really cool to have this like tiny little pop singer come out to a crowd of metalheads and you know, do what she does.
Right.
And she looked right at home. She was. It was.
Well,
really
I like
cool.
it when that happens.
Yeah.
When, you know, when pop or different genres of musicians come together, and I mean it just works. Like they're like Lady Gaga, she's been doing a lot of contributions, and I don't like her music. I like her as a person. Her music I'm not a fan of, but she does a lot of contributions. She was supposed to be on the new Foo Fighters album actually, but that didn't pan out.
What did you think of her Metallica collaboration this year?
It was
okay.
I thought it was cool. I love that song.
Yeah.
It's, to me, it's like the most classic thing that they've released since.
And moment of silence.
Yeah. And this is coming from a
We've been
hardcore
talking-
Metallica fan.
We have been talking a lot. What time is it? So,
It is 8:33.
not that it will
8:33.
matter when you guys listen to the recording of this, which will hopefully be ready to stream every Thursday. And we really, our pilot ended up being really long. It's not going to be like this every week or every episode. Like we said earlier, we're gonna recap what was reviewed on the site, play some music. This was just more of a welcome to Bucketlist Radio podcast styles, and it was awesome to have Sid, Kate, and Jesse in my living room eating pizza, drinking tea on this very cold and snowy day. We've been having the worst winter ever.
Yes, we are trying to make you jealous.
With my cat curled up in a ball, purring like a baby. And snoring. He was snoring before I heard him. Maybe it picked up on the mic.
Maybe it picked up.
Yeah, which would be awesome. So thanks for listening. Hopefully you stuck around for the entire episode, for the interview we did with Chris Mills, and hearing our thoughts on 2017's music releases. Any last words before we end the episode?
Can't wait for the next one, guys.
Yeah.
Stay tuned on bucketlistmusicreviews.com.
Yeah, it'll be streamable again on SoundCloud and on bucketlistmusicreviews.com. Thanks again.
Peace.
Yay.
Apparently I won burlesque classes.